This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with James O'Brien.
3 minutes after 10 is the time. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. That's a really odd morning in many ways, politically. I mean, there are two stories dominating political discourse, and oddly, one of them at this moment in time, from where I am sitting, is not actually the resident doctors' strike. And the fact that the Health Secretary can come on to LBC and have an absolute stormer. Nick wasn't exaggerating. The response in our inbox, in fact, I'll give you an indication of how significant or how impactful, a dreadful word, but sometimes it's the only word that works, that was. I'm not looking at my inbox now. I'm looking at a message I got from an old mate of mine. I mean, literally, someone who listens to LBC perhaps a little bit more than is healthy, but rarely bothers to get in touch to tell me what he thinks about other programmes. He was so refreshingly open. I was taken aback. With more Labour politicians like him, I would lean their way. And that is, I mean, look, my mate is politically engaged up to a point, but he doesn't live and breathe it like some people do. And he certainly doesn't bother getting in touch with me to comment on politicians' appearances on LBC. So in some ways, I find that more significant than the churning inbox with praise, including one. And I mean, you never read the minds of these people. I thought Nigel Farage was the only politician I liked, but go Wes. They couldn't be more different, both morally, politically, and of course with regards to their attitudes to people like Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump. But our politics is very often an emotional thing, isn't it? If you want to find out a little bit more about him, then I would recommend the episode of Full Disclosure that we recorded together, I think last year or the year before, where he really does, and his memoir is pretty extraordinary as well. He's an extremely and exceedingly human politician, but he's also the Secretary of State for Health. And there's a resident doctors' strike today. I mean, he should really be sort of up to his neck in criticism and or abuse on a morning like this. But he somehow managed to avoid or evade responsibility for that while pinning it all entirely on the doctors, or even perhaps the third of doctors who actually voted for it. I mean, I don't know that there's much to be gained from us just taking a cavalcade of callers saying, I love Wes, or wow, he was really impressive. But I'd like to find some way into it. Perhaps the way into it is to look at the broader political week. So we'll do that now. The other thing about the... I'm in a really strange position this morning. I wonder whether you are as well. In that I think I am crosser with the government about the fact that my income tax now looks likely not to go up than I am about almost everything else that they've done in the last 18 months. How the hell does something like that happen? What's really got your goat today, Jimbo? Oh, it looks like my income tax is not going up. What? Well, I mean, I really did believe that this black hole, 30 billion, I think, entry level, this 30 billion can only be addressed by doing what is the most straightforward and necessary fiscal change, which would be an increase in the amount of income tax that people like me, there's a little bit of debate to be had about how far down the earnings ladder we go when raising more income tax, but people like me should certainly be paying a little bit more. Listen, I'm what is called a proper patriot, which doesn't mean I spend my weekends putting up tatty nylon flags in the dark in areas where the residents have expressed no desire to have tatty nylon flags cable tied to their lampposts. And it doesn't mean that I think if you are black, then you're not really British or English. I am a proper patriot in that I want the very best for my country, and I'm prepared to do my bit, up to a point. I'm not a entirely selfless individual, but the best thing you can do as a patriotic citizen is pay your taxes. And I think I should be paying more in the current climate. Be nice by the time the next general election comes around if we feel that crisis has softened, but I feel that I should be paying more taxes, and I was prepared to. I was almost, and I know you're going to think this is ridiculous or incredibly insulated from the fiscal realities that many people face, I was almost looking forward to it. The political fallout of a manifesto pledge notwithstanding, a rise in income taxes was, I felt, necessary, and they've made me feel a bit stupid. Because either it wasn't necessary, which means I've misunderstood everything, or it is still necessary and they've bottled it. it also, and this is where perhaps the Kremlinology becomes a little bit unhelpful, I also think it possibly inflates the balloon that we popped earlier this week, which also makes me feel a little bit stupid. Because if this has been done to appease Labour MPs, as seems to me most likely, I think you can sell the country, certainly 3.5, 4 years out from a general election, you can sell the country hard medicine. You know, you can sell them tough love. Ultimately, you've got enough time for the impacts of an unpopular policy to produce popular results, to absorb the short-term pain of a manifesto pledge break. I don't think that the average voter, and of course the average voter in days of social media and amplified voices is actually quite hard to find, but I don't think the average voter sets epic amounts of store by manifesto pledges. In many ways, I think that broke, if there'd ever been a particularly strong bond of trust, I think it broke in 2010, when, of course, coalition meant that both Tories and Liberal Democrats could argue that their manifesto no longer applied. If you expand the notion of changing your mind when the facts change, then it actually works for everybody. You get into power and you realise what you've been left with is infinitely worse than what you thought. Whether you're telling the truth or not, if you make that argument compellingly, then it's stupid to say, but I expect you to keep all the promises that you made. It's a bit like expecting your marriage vows to be observed after you find out that your husband's a bigamist and has got another wife living on Acacia Avenue with 13 kids. Oh, well, you'll suppose you said till death do us part. Yeah, but I didn't know he was a bigamist at the time. So when the facts change, we are allowed to change our minds. But the sense, and look, the OBR forecasts are a little bit better than expected, but not, I don't think, £30 billion better. The U-turns upset people, I think, more than the original decisions. And this is like the hokey-cokey of budgets now. You put income tax up, you put income tax down, you do in, out, you shake it all about, you do the hokey-cokey and you turn around, and that sadly is what it's all about, it seems to me. So this is a Financial Times scoop that has been picked up, obviously, by everybody, and it is a clearly Treasury-based brief that the income tax rises are not coming in. It's an estimated £30 billion black hole that she's now going to have to fill with it's a dreadful word, and I think they've even used it, a smorgasbord of narrower tax-raising measures. So I'm almost certain to be paying more tax this time next year than I currently am, and that is as it should be, although I'd obviously hope that some of these narrow tax-raising measures include taxes on wealth alongside taxes on high incomes. But of course, the freezing of tax thresholds for another 2 years brings a lot of other people not currently in the top tax rate, but as their wages go up, they will move into it. Another £8 billion raised there. Why am I disappointed that income tax isn't going up? That's just weird, right? I try not to see too much of the world through the lens of my own very subjective experience. I love personal experience more than perhaps theoretical opinion. The phone-ins I enjoy the most are when you tell me of things that have happened in your life that haven't happened in mine, and that helps me get a better idea of how the world works and how certain things feel and land and why they influence us to do the things that we do, up to and including voting. But I don't know why I'm so dispirited this morning by this particular policy change. I genuinely don't know why. If, as I suspect, it is to do more with fending off backbench unhappiness than almost anything else, then it reinflates the balloon of coup fears that were dominating discourse earlier this week. That really weird story that seemed to come out of Downing Street, that did come out of Downing Street, that posited Wes Streeting as being on manoeuvres. Some politicians are always on manoeuvres, but the question of whether or not they think that the, what's it called? The snitch, the golden snitch, whether or not they're going to be able to grab the golden snitch at this particular moment is, of course, very different from asking people whether they want to be Prime Minister one day. And the fear now of backbenchers in the Labour government looks to me to be the defining factor in policy decisions. And that is bloody awful. That is weak. And I'm sick of saying to you, oh, I hope I'm wrong. Even when it's true, I don't like to say, I hope I'm wrong. I do hope I'm wrong. Of course I hope I'm wrong. But why on earth has Rachel Reeves allowed the speculation about putting income tax rates up? How on earth has she allowed that to go so far around the world that it was pretty much a given that it was going to happen? Natasha Clark, our political editor, was sceptical for a while, for quite a long time actually, but and we disagreed about it on air. And the last time we talked about it, she said, no, I think actually it is going to happen. Everybody has been brought to, largely because of things that she has said, but everybody has come to the point where they expected income tax rates to go up, especially, if not exclusively, for high earners. And they have decided not to. So, listen, not putting income tax rates up when you haven't created the irresistible idea that you would is a very different scenario from not putting them up when everybody thinks you're going to. This is important because this is about why you would say yes, no. It's not about why you would say no. It's about why you would say yes, no. That's the bit I struggle with. Politically, fiscally, I can't see that it makes any sense at all not to do the simplest and most effective thing that you can do in these situations. She never categorically said, yes, I'm putting income tax up. But listen, the way these things work is that you can let it be known that it's not going to happen when everybody is saying that it is. And yet, I don't enjoy this any more than you do. This thrall that we're often into decent journalism. It's not like showbiz journalism. Political journalists don't sort of make things up completely. They need to be briefed. They need to be double sourced. At least the good ones do. The outlets that aren't sort of race-baiting billionaire projects. So, you know, if you're looking at The Guardian or you're looking at the BBC, which is having a tough time at the moment, but they're not going to print complete flyers. They're not going to run with stuff that they're doing just to keep the proprietor happy or their psychopathic editor. This stuff doesn't happen by accident, and it doesn't happen in isolation. Yes, there's too much briefing. There's far too much anonymity. But I had reconciled myself to the idea. Not even reconciled myself to it. I had welcomed the idea that income tax was going to go up, and now she's telling us that it isn't. I don't think it would be, even by my standards, it would be self-indulgent, wouldn't it, to say, why am I so disappointed by this? How can people be disappointed that their taxes aren't going up? Answer, it's an overused word at the moment, patriotic duty. Genuinely. Your patriotic duty. I want income tax to go up. Not for people who can't afford it, let me be absolutely clear, but I want income tax to go up for people who can afford it, whether they currently realise it or not, because I'm patriotic, because I think that's what's best for the country, because I think this £30 billion black hole needs to be filled. And now it's not going up. So I've got two questions for you. Why are you disappointed or delighted that income tax is not going up? That's all. That's a weird question. Why are you disappointed or delighted that income tax now is not going up? Hey, the problem with U-turns is you make one and you can easily make another. It's something that Margaret Thatcher managed to nail down, didn't she, in famous fashion, by insisting that even if things were absolutely awful, she would never do a U-turn, even if it made life better for everyone. A weakness and a strength, but probably preferable rhetorically to people who U-turn all the time. And then the second question is, why do you think this has happened? And listen, if you want to have a crack at unpacking the OBR forecast and explaining why this is not actually the hokey-cokey that I've described it as, then I am here for it. This isn't one of those mornings where I think I've got all the answers and then I invite you to lob your balls at my coconuts in the hope of knocking one off the stand. Quite the opposite, in fact. I'm confused and disappointed, even perhaps dismayed by what has happened. And I find myself more confused, disappointed and dismayed than I was by some of the other, arguably much bigger missteps. Because I could understand those missteps. Even winter fuel allowance, you could do the sums and think, oh, that's why they've done it. What a stupid little bit of communications that was, but that's why they've done it. So why do you think, 0345 6060 973, why do you think Rachel Reeves has allowed the whole world to believe that she was about to put income tax up and then let it be known that she isn't? That's the question that I want you to answer. So how do you greet the news, and why do you think she's done it like this? 0345 6060 973 is the number you need. And do ring in. Loads of first-time callers this week, but this is one of those subjects where I don't know how to put this without sounding a bit rude to people who ring me a lot, but people who wouldn't normally dream of picking up the phone, but who think they've got something interesting to say about this. It's one of those mornings where I feel like we've tapped the back of the Etch-a-Sketch and shaken it clean, and I'd like you to twiddle the knobs now, even if you've never twiddled them before. Try and make some sense of what seems to me to be pretty close to incomprehensible. Why do you let the whole world believe that you're going to do something painful but necessary, and then let it be known that you're not? 0345 6060 973 is the number you need. It's just coming up to 20 past 10.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 21 minutes after 10. And look, even if we can make sense of the U-turn, and it is not necessarily impossible, that £30 billion hole in finances is now closer to 20 billion, according to the latest OBR forecast. But again, you know, letting the expectation of income tax rises go so far and so unchallenged makes you wonder why have they managed to snatch disaster out of the jaws of victory, even if they are going to take that. Anyway, enough from me. Jim's in Dundee. Jim, what do you reckon?
Oh, hello. Good morning, James.
Hello,
nice
Jim.
to speak to you.
Likewise.
Thanks very much.
You're very welcome.
Listen, I'm kind of disappointed, you know, and the reason I'm disappointed is that I feel that we're missing an opportunity here to get back to an idea that used to prevail in society pre-Thatcher, I might add, when the obsession became about low taxes and the obsession about the individual, you know.
Yes.
Whereas this issue we have now, I feel, is that we have an opportunity to say to people, we can get back to the greater good. You know, this talk about broadest shoulders and stuff, you know, that we hear.
Well,
opportunity.
A lot of people who you might think have broad shoulders don't think that they do have broad shoulders. That's partly what they're responding to, isn't it? The idea that the middle classes, as we might loosely describe them, are already feeling rinsed. They're already feeling that they're getting very little in return for quite a high tax take. They feel so politically very difficult. Even people who might subscribe to the idea of patriotic duty when it comes to taxation would object to the idea that it's their turn to push their shoulder ever harder to the wheel.
Yeah, I think, Jim, I understand what you're saying, and we certainly live in a world where we've got more materialistic costs put on with now, you know, whether it be Sky subscriptions or cars or mortgages or
that's
whatever.
true.
I understand that, you know.
That's really true, actually.
These are, you know, things that trickle on prior to, you know, as I say, I go back to this obsession with individualism, you know, and and I feel that this is what's happening now, that we've succumbed to this idea of individualism, and we've forgotten about the greater good.
That's a phone call that, as you acknowledge yourself, Jim, you could have made that at pretty much any point from sort of 1990 onwards, and I wouldn't necessarily have argued with you, but the doesn't really address the detail of why she has allowed this to get halfway around the world and then not actually delivered on it. I know what you mean. I guess that's what you expect from a Labour government, but it's not what you're going to get from this one. That notion of disappointment, I'm not going to press people on whether or not they would be directly affected by it. I think it's pertinent, but not the be-all and end-all. You know, yes, we definitely want to see taxes go up for other people. It's a very different position from mine, for example, which is I think that people like me should be paying more income tax. I'm going to put everybody in Idiot's Corner. I haven't bothered checking my inbox, but if anybody is sending me messages saying, well, why don't you pay more voluntarily then that is actually straight into Idiot's Corner without even your feet touching the ground or having your message read out, because that kills taxation stone dead. You know, the charity donations that many of us make are in lieu, if you like, of taxation, things that the state should be doing that are instead done by charities. That is an area in which you can make voluntary donations. But if you start citing voluntary tax donations as an alternative to taxation, then you are not only stupid, but you're also on a path to a society where all tax is voluntary. And I'm pretty sure you don't need me to explain why that is ridiculous. It also puts those of us who want to pay more tax in the boat of having to subsidise the reluctance of selfish idiots who don't think that they can enjoy the benefits of living in a magnificent country without actually picking up the tab for it every year. Sean's in Birmingham. Sean, what's going on?
Hello, James. It is a pleasure to speak with you.
You say that, Sean. It's very early doors.
No, I'm feeling as though I'm in the same boat as you this morning. I'm a young person. I'm disappointed that my taxes aren't going up, and I'm quite surprised I'm saying that. But it's this situation that was leaked to the press initially of this idea of 2 up, 2 down. It was looking at putting the focus on, of course.
Yeah, income tax going up, national insurance coming down for some people.
Yeah, and it looked as though with the way the system was going to work, it was going to protect people at the bottom,
yes,
but pensioners would be impacted. And I think they're playing a bit of a media game at the moment. And there was a concern that once again, Labour would be seen as, taking away from the pensioners, which the right-wing media, as we know, will have a field day with. So I think it's all been a bit of an elaborate media game, playing to try and understand.
They're not very good at that either, are they? As we saw with all the briefing against Wes Streeting earlier this week. The man that they briefed against, whoever it was an extraordinary moment yesterday where they made a joke to one journalist, a sarcastic joke. And then the journalist reported it without expressing the sarcasm, and then an hour later had to clarify, no, this was, I'll give you the details shortly, but essentially someone has tried to attack Wes Streeting this week, and they've basically made him the Messiah.
This is it. It's as though they're constantly trying to fight the game on the same rules that they've been trying since day dot, and it's not getting anywhere, is it? It's, if this hadn't been leaked to the press initially, we wouldn't even be having this conversation today.
And it wasn't just the leak, was it? As we've done a great job of reminding us, there was a lot of detail there. So, that's not like a pint in the Red Lion with a journalist coming away convinced that income tax is going to go up and everybody else in the lobby going, really? Who told you that? This is detail. This is, yes, we're seeding the ground. We're preparing the field for an unpopular policy, potentially, that will involve a manifesto breach. And then they bottle it.
Exactly. And I mean, all the language Rachel Reeves has been using and all the ministers out on the media rounds, every time they're questioned on it, it's not, the previous line, we're going to stick to our manifesto, commitment. They've made it very clear.
It is a weird one, isn't it? And that idea that, well, I mean, listen, the best case scenario is that the facts have changed and they've changed their mind. And we can't discount that just because we're feeling a little bit silly about having thrown our weight behind an unpopular policy that they've now abandoned, leaving us to, I guess, the harder you were leaning into the policy, the harder you've fallen over when they've removed it. But if it is because of this OBR forecast, putting the deficit, the hole, whatever you want to call it, at 20 billion instead of 30 billion, then they would argue we don't need to break the class. We don't need to break the glass, not the class. We don't need to set off the alarm. We don't need to reach for the biggest lever. We can do 20 billion. We can address 20 billion with lots of little levers. If we had to do 30 billion, we'd have to reach for the big lever. But that sounds a little bit desperate, doesn't it?
This is it. I think my only other theory.
Go on, I love a theory.
I'm living in a place of, imagination here.
Of course.
But they're, of course, now talking about bringing in this exit tax, to match us up with a lot of the other EU countries.
Yes.
And of course, the Greens, for example, are pushing for a wealth tax on top of that and stating that could raise something in the region of 10 to 24 billion.
Yes.
So I can't remember, was it approximately 6 billion that they were talking about with this 2 up, 2 down?
Yeah.
In looking to appease the Labour backbenchers who, of course, would be unhappy with this, I mean, it's very unlikely, but, potentially she could be looking at a wealth tax in some capacity. That's, like I say, I'm imagining that would be them doing good politics for a change, in my opinion, but that would, fill the gap and then mean that those taxes didn't need to go up on, the most vulnerable in society.
Yeah.
When we're looking at pensioners, it could be a bit more...
Well, I mean, except, of course, that there's an awful lot of pensioners who are anything but vulnerable. And they managed to get that wrong, of course, that distinction wrong when they did the winter fuel allowance, an incredibly blunt instrument. So how long ago was it that we took that live press conference? I get muddled up in my head as well. Sometimes it all blurs into one. I think it was about a week ago. Morning press conference with all the big broadcasters that effectively created the idea that income tax was going up, right? I'm not dreaming that. That happened, didn't it? That kind of... And here we are now, absorbing the news that it definitely isn't today. Tomorrow, of course, the left leg could go out again. They put your left leg in, they left leg out, in, out, shake it all about. You do the hokey-cokey and you turn around. And that, it seems, is what it's all about. Lottie Morley's got your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 10:34 and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Warren, I came away from that press conference last week with a rather different impression from me and almost everybody else, but clearly he won't be entirely alone. There was absolutely nothing in the Chancellor's press conference to suggest income tax was going up. That was the media again. So why did she have the press conference, mate? What was it in aid of? Relatively unprecedented, certainly 3 weeks out from a budget. Most people witnessing it believed it to be, concluded it was a pitch-rolling exercise for an increase in income tax. The only possible explanation, if you were to deploy Occam's razor, of why the Chancellor would have a press conference 3 weeks out from a budget that the world is waiting for is because she wanted to prepare the audience for something big. And everybody else, I have often been the only right person in a room full of wrong people, so it's possible you're in that role today. But why did she have the press conference if it wasn't to roll the pitch for income tax rises? What else did anybody take away from that? And you have to be able to answer the question of why she did it. And I'm afraid that the answer really is that she was rolling the pitch for income tax rises. And now they've unrolled the pitch. And the reason that is being given by people close to the matter, or as in journalese, Financial Times, people familiar with the matter, the reason they're giving is that the Office for Budget Responsibility has reduced its expected hole, for want of a better word, from 30 billion to 20 billion. And that doesn't seem to me to butter any chest. I thought it's a hideous thing to say to you, because he's now ripped his own mask off and revealed himself to be precisely the sort of nativist half-wit that many of us suspected he was all along. But God spare us from Svengalis and gurus who think that they're geniuses. It was Dominic Cummings most recently, and this chap Morgan McSweeney's name appears far too often than is healthy in analysis of what the government is getting wrong. But he has the air of a man who thinks he's playing 5D chess when really he's just playing shove halfpenny. I understand this and I understand that, and the calculation is that people will be repelled by Nigel Farage more than they are disappointed with us, and I'm going to move that piece to here in the plane of and therefore we can do this and we can do that, and you're not playing 5D chess. And it might work in opposition or in theory, but when you're in government, you got to govern in prose. You can't do it in poetry, as Wes Streeting still somehow manages to do. And you certainly can't do it in theory. But here we are. 10:37 is the time. I suppose the best argument you could come up with, as Steve and Raymond have done so, that she was testing the water with that press conference to see just how unpopular it would be when she did what she intended to do and put income tax up. And she has found that the water is too hot. That's the best available analysis that doesn't include the observation that she made it clear she was going to put it up. But anyway, She should have done. She should do. And it looks like she's not going to. Adam's in Derry. Adam, what made you pick up the phone?
Well, because you asked for people that had never rang in before.
Well, not literally, Adam. So I oscillate between saying what made you pick up the phone and what would you like to say. And obviously with you, I should have lent into the what would you like to say. I'm a bit bored. Why did you pick up the phone? I'm a bit bored, James. I'm waiting for Cash in the Attic to come on. So I thought I'd give you... Go on then. What have you got?
Yeah. I even though I've not got much time for Rachel Reeves, but
sure.
I think I'd give her the benefit of the doubt.
Good, go on.
In that, I think maybe she considered putting up income tax, and has been considering that over the past, weeks and months. But then, at this point now, she's realised, and that was never going to be popular. Mm. She didn't need to do a press conference to find out that was going to be unpopular.
Well, that's very true.
She's then realised that for whatever reason she doesn't need to do that. So she's now made the announcement that she's not doing it because. Well,
because what? So she rolled the pitch, and the response that anybody with a brain could have told her she was going to got, and therefore she unrolled the pitch.
Yeah, but I think, give her the benefit of the doubt. She was her and her people would be working out, what needed to be done tax-wise, and it was probably on the table to raise income tax. But I think when all the calculations have been done,
they can get away with not doing it. So it was a last resort, and the last resort has been taken off. The need for the last resort has been taken off the table by an improved fiscal situation. And you know what this does? I don't know if it's your intention. It makes it all our fault. It makes it all the fault of journalists getting too excited about things.
To be honest, I think it is. There was that much. She never said anything. She never said it was going to go up.
No, but she called an unprecedented 8 a.m. press conference for one reason and one reason only, to what's the word I want? To offer a taste of income tax rises. All right, you can't. No,
she didn't.
She did.
I disagree.
Well, why did she do it then?
Well, she didn't do it to announce that she was going to raise income tax.
Not to announce, but to roll the pitch, test the waters, whatever.
I disagree.
Well, then you have to tell me why she did it then.
Well, quote what she said that indicated that.
I haven't got the words in front of me. But, I can find them, and I can tell you that everybody came away thinking that entire exercise was a sort of softening up. Well, what did you think it was done for then? Just tell me that. You don't even need to produce words. Why do you think she did it?
A number of other things, but not that.
Name one.
No, I don't have the words in front of me.
It's not the words in front of you. This is your own thoughts and opinions. Why do you think she called the press conference? I'll tell you why I think she called it: to either roll out the pitch or test the waters for income tax rises. There you go. Your turn.
Oh, well, I don't know.
There's no other reason, mate.
Genuinely never got that impression.
OK, fair enough. And that would again be the media's fault for taking 2 and 2 and coming up with 4.5.
That's my view, yeah.
Fair enough. I like that view. It's a calmer view than perhaps the consensus one at the moment, and I thought we all wanted calmness when we went into the polling booth at the last general election. But it feels, and that's why I take the journalism, just in my own defence, if I've become part of the problem of over-egging these particular puddings, I don't take the journalism of the Daily Mail or the Daily Express or the Daily Telegraph, sadly, now gets added to that list, and I can just hear my late father, erstwhile Midlands correspondent of that once august organ turning in his grave. This is an FT story. So, that is about as close to a paragon of media objectivity that we've got in this country, the Financial Times. Certainly in terms of print journalism and money rules at the Financial Times. There is no partisanship. There is no bias. There's no footballification whatsoever at the FT. Of course, if they tell you a truth that you don't like, you can argue that there is footballification. When they came out, for example, in favour of remaining in the European Union, people who aren't very clever could construe that to be bias. But again, it's an objective analysis of all the available facts, feeding into a conclusion that doesn't take into account xenophobia, ludicrous emotions, or bogus interpretations of what sovereignty means. So when the Financial Times go in on something like this, we will talk about it. Some radio presenters perhaps base their worldview on whatever the mad editor of the Daily Mail has decided to put on the front page today. But that's never going to happen here. And that, I think, is usually a bulwark against sensationalism, hyperbole, reading too much into things, seeing things that aren't really there. And I stand by that, because it's the FT today that is reporting the ditching of the income tax rise, not reporting a confirmation that it isn't going to happen. But you can't ditch something that you weren't already carrying. And my contributors, notwithstanding, who think it was never actually being carried by this government, remain in a minority, and I think that they are wrong. But I mean, it's not Idiot's Corner wrong by about 5,000 miles. It's just that no one would report the ditching of something if it wasn't already perceived as being carried. You can't drop something you're not holding. Dawn's in Northwich. Dawn, what would you like to say?
Hi, James.
Hello.
Yeah. Well, hi. Well, James, you know, we are patriotic, and
Yes.
we would have been happy to pay the extra taxes for our country to help. But it's simple is this government is incompetent, and you know, I'm very, very disappointed with this government so far. And why I don't understand is, if they're £30 billion short, why are they not taxing the ultra rich? The ultra rich have been asked to be taxed. They want to be taxed.
Well, no, they absolutely don't. I mean, there are some wonderful organisations like Patriotic Millionaires, but you don't buy newspapers, or you don't inherit newspapers in a country predicated by extraordinary inequality and inherited wealth, without desperately trying to protect extraordinary inequality and inherited wealth. So you know how it works, Dawn.
Yeah.
Even people who aren't ultra rich will come out shilling for the people who are. By everyone's going to leave the country. Everyone's going to move to Dubai. I mean, that is, everyone's already left. Or the lies are halfway around the world before the truth has got his trousers on. But,
well, that's true, James. But I think this government is extremely weak. I mean, let's face it. The 30 billion that we're short is right there. It's Brexit, isn't it? So why aren't these? I mean, I know I'm going back.
It's
to
not
that
just Brexit. Furlough, Ukraine. There are other things, but yeah, Brexit is the biggest egg in the box.
I mean, if you look back and you see what happened, you know, the dip that we had in the economy during COVID and the rise that was coming in the economy pre-COVID, we had a little dip, and then the rise was slow, and then it's been so slow since then. And the only reason why, when you compare it to other countries, is because of Brexit. So whether we like it or not, that will haunt us now forever and a day. So the government needs to be strong. It's weak, and all they're doing is playing into the hands of Reform and the Green Party. So,
which is a sort of populist spasm on either side of them, one to the right and one to the left. I'm not conflating one with the other, except in terms of the ease of making big promises in opposition that you have no prospect of delivering in power. If it's gone down from 30 billion to 20 billion, as the OBR forecasts now, does that change your position at all? Because that's the... I can't help wondering whether we're all a little...
I don't believe it has.
What?
I don't believe it has.
Well, the OBR says it has, and that is what they work with. George Osborne set up the OBR so that economic forecasts would be immune from party political influence, so that you couldn't massage the figures or cook the books in a way that made things look like you wanted them to look rather than they were. So you have an independent office for budget responsibility. The expected hole was previously 30 billion. It's now closer to 20 billion. Here's Rachel Reeves. She says that means we don't have to break glass and sound the alarm anymore.
Well, I mean, you've got to look at the state of the country. Is she crazy? We don't have to break glass. I mean,
no, you don't. You break. She's right. She's going to break some glass. She's not. Let me go back to the levers. That's a better analogy than the glass. How dare you start picking holes in my analogies? Because it's £20 billion. We don't need to pull the biggest lever. We'll pull all the other ones instead.
Well, I'm still under the same consensus of the government that we have right now. I was quite excited when I thought that we were going to get a government in that promised us and was going to do things.
And here we are. I mean, this is the first...
Here we are.
And here we are. It is odd, isn't it? They can't... I mean, this must be the first radio phone-in history where people are queuing up to tell me that they wish income tax had gone up.
Right? They're so weak, James. They're just so weak. It's pathetic. And, as well, on top of that is, we never hear... Do you ever hear from Keir Starmer? He's never on the radio. He's never on the station. But I'll tell you who I do hear a lot of. And you know who I'm referring to.
Is it Darth Vader?
Yeah.
Well, look, Keir Starmer's got a country to run. In his defence, Nigel Farage, to whom I think you're referring, who appears to have a season ticket on some programmes, he doesn't have a country to run. He doesn't even have a constituency to worry about because he's never there. So, that's not... It's a valid point in the sense of Starmer should be doing more to speak to the people about what's going on, but I don't know that he should necessarily be appearing on this radio station more than he already is, or at least as much as the fellow you're alluding to is, who is, of course, constantly in the business of inflating balloons full of bile, bigotry and nonsense, and amazingly, not having the people that are interviewing him bother to pop them. Dawn, thank you. You can't argue with much of what she said, though, can you? On the weakness front. Talking of George Osborne, I've got a multiple choice game for you. Someone went to George... Oh, man, this is wrong. Someone went to George Osborne's house for dinner recently. Someone well-known in the political world. And on their way home from George Osborne's house, they were photographed urinating against one of his neighbour's front gates. Was it A, Nigel Farage? Was it B, Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor? Or was it C, Peter Mandelson? So somebody in the last 24 hours has been photographed having a wee, having been at George Osborne's house for dinner against the front gate or the post, the brick gate post of, not a neighbour necessarily, but someone on his way home. Was it A, Nigel Farage, having a cheeky whittle? Was it B, Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, the... a character formerly known as Prince, or was it C, Peter Mandelson, the character formerly known as Ambassador to the United States of America? I will tell you, and I won't forget, I promise, straight after this.
James O'Brien on LBC.
Tell a lie, it was an actual neighbour. So these are the sort of stories that make you realise that there is, well, a sort of world where they're all mates with each other despite being on different sides of the political divide. Peter Mandelson's at George Osborne's house for a party, and he was waiting for an Uber outside and took the opportunity to have a wee against the gate of one of his actual neighbours, one of George Osborne's neighbours, who has said, "I'm surprised that whichever of my neighbours he happened to be visiting didn't offer him a toilet. It doesn't seem very diplomatic," he told the Daily Mail last night. So the answer is Peter Mandelson, if you hadn't worked it out already, the clue being diplomatic. I love all the people who thought it was all three of them. I love that. I mean, that'd be a photo, wouldn't it? Nigel Farage, Peter Mandelson and Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor. Should we call him just Windsor? Do we have to say Mountbatten? Yeah, sack it. Andrew Windsor, all lined up against the wall in Notting Hill Gate, relieving themselves against presumably a multi-million-pound house. 10:53 is the time. Back to the income tax question and the ditching of a policy that they had put enormous effort into making almost everybody, not everybody, almost everybody believe was on the way. It's why you do the stuff about we've got some tough things to do, Pete. You have to realise how big the problem is. You don't then announce tweaks and small things. You only lay the ground for something huge if you're planning to breach your manifesto. I think that is fairly obvious. But again, I accept that what is obvious to almost everybody is not obvious to everybody. Jeff's in Epsom. Jeff, what would you like to say?
Oh, just on your last point, James, I think that'd probably make a great new Banksy image, wouldn't it, with the three of them leaning up against the wall? It actually would. You're right. Yeah, pass it on. We'll get a commission. I think with this, your previous call with the lady was saying about a weak government, that sort of leads on to what I think is happening at the moment is we've got loads of Svengalis and spin doctors, the Dominic Cummings and the Sweeneys of this world, which appear to be effectively manipulating and using the actual elected ministers to
test out their theories. And I think what they've done is they've run this idea and leaked it heavily that we're going to increase, and that everybody's up in arms about there being a break in the manifesto, and then all of a sudden we've got and massaging of figures. I mean, I've heard so many different potholes and black holes and.
Well, that's what to be fair, that's what the OBR is for. That's what the OBR is for. You don't have to
confusing us.
Well, I mean, that's our fault then, because you rely on what the OBR is saying, and some of that confusion dissipates. It's the reason why it was set up in the first place. And look, they're not infallible. No forecast is infallible, but
how many different figures have we actually been quoted over the last 6 months?
Respectfully, they share their working. So when for example, when growth doesn't go up by as much as was originally expected before Jaguar Land Rover was shut down by a cyber attack, they explain that the reason why it hasn't gone up by what we expected it to go up when we made that forecast before Jaguar Land Rover got shut down for weeks by a cyber attack. But it did get shut down, so the facts have changed, therefore my forecast changes. So I take your general point about it being confusing, but if you pick the most trustworthy, that's why I talk about the Financial Times rather than some of the other media outlets that I wouldn't trust as far as I could throw them, which is, admittedly with a newspaper quite far, but you take my point, it's a figure of speech. The OBR explains why its forecasts change, and so they are worth the paper that they're printed on. They're not gospel truth, and they never will be infallible, but they're not like pie in the sky, made up, here today, gone tomorrow, hokey cokey and out, shake it all about kind of figures.
We're getting continued narrative about there being this problem, that problem, the other problem. And when you look, we've got weak government. I mean, the reason that Keir Starmer isn't often seen over here doing anything particular, I think, is because he's known as obviously not being a good communicator. Wes Streeting comes out and seems to be quite eloquent, and then obviously there's another sort of load of stuff that's been generated all of a sudden. And obviously he came in, gave the pay rise to the doctors. We had all the train drivers and everything else, which obviously had a considerable cost to the government. And obviously that went quite well because the doctors are coming back for, another 28%, is it?
No. It's not another 28%. That's what they got the last time around, but they're coming back for more. Actually, I said that rather glibly. Maybe it is another 28%. I should double check, but I'm pretty sure it is.
Well, it just strikes me that we've got weak leadership, and I mean, I'm not, there seems to be this sort of situation in British politics now that let's see how quickly we can get rid of a Prime Minister. I mean, obviously the
that steers us back. That steers us back, actually, oddly, because the first half of your call, it sounded like you'd be part of that process at the moment. And the case for getting rid of the Prime Minister was one that we examined earlier in the week, and it won't have been helped. For those who were resisting the sense of momentum pushing Keir Starmer out of the door, it won't have been helped by the week that they have gifted to Wes Streeting in what should have been, as Jeff alludes to, it should have been his toughest week by far as Health Secretary, laying off 14,000 NHS staff and the first day today of a resident doctors' strike. And yet, if you weren't listening to Nick Ferrari earlier, then you need me to tell you that he appeared on the programme for half an hour and walked out of the studio covered in garlands. I'd been carried shoulder high by all of the listeners getting into, not by Nick, I grant you, although he was making comparisons with Nigel Farage, which is about as high a compliment as you can get from some people in this country at the moment. Not necessarily a compliment anybody honest or unracist would enjoy, but there you go. It's intended as a compliment when it's made in those circumstances. And Streeting ends up ending the week on a much higher plane than he began it, when he should really have taken the biggest kicking of his time in the health department. Very, very, very strange times. It is coming up to 11 o'clock. Thank you, Jeff. Apologies to Steph and Dave and John and Herbert. I think that's the second time this week, Herbert, I've apologised to you for not getting onto the programme. I say that only because you have quite a noticeable name. Possibly there are loads of Herberts listening to this programme, but it seems unlikely. And also, Herbert in Hounslow has an agreeable alliteration to it, which makes it perhaps stick in my memory more than, for example, Dave in Brentwood, who's also on the screen. I don't know what we're going to do next. I never know what we're going to do next. You think I'm exaggerating when I tell you I don't know what we're going to do next, and then I prove it to you by coming back after the news and obviously and quite clearly not knowing what we're going to talk about. Stay tuned to find out.
James O'Brien on LBC.
What's his name? Is it Good Bosch? Is that what you call him? Good Bosch? Tom Swarbrick's team are obsessed with these Bosch people. I'm not even quite sure who they are. It's probably a mark of my detachment from popular culture, but Good bosh. Is that what you call it? Will someone please tell me if that's the correct use of the phrase? Is it good bosh? Is that what you call him? Good bosh. Has joined my campaign, which he almost certainly doesn't know about and has almost certainly never heard of me. Good John. What? Big John Bosh. Good Bosh John Big. Anyway, he's joined my campaign without knowing it to remind people what an amazing place London is. He joins the general manager of the Dorchester Hotel, who revealed this week that a client had arrived, a customer, a guest even, had arrived from America, who asked him when they got here for some private security. Could you organise some private security? So I said, how come? Reports the general manager of the Dorchester, Luca Virgilio. And she said, well, everybody told me there is so much crime. You need to be careful. 2 days later, the guest comes back to the general manager of the Dorchester Hotel and says, I don't need security. It's fine to walk around London. And we are not properly recognising this. Inevitably, you want to find somebody who is acting maliciously and malevolently against the national interest. Look for a bloke that admires Vladimir Putin, and up pops Nigel Farage calling London lawless, even though violent crime in the city is currently at historically low levels. Phone theft is up. Phone snatching is something that needs to be addressed, not least by getting the phone manufacturers to make it rather harder to to let people sell your phone on for a relatively large sum of money after they've nicked it. Chief executive of the 10 Group, which provides concierge services in London, says we are hearing anxiety from visitors for the first time. It all comes from social media that the UK has serious issues of crime and unrest. These false facts are damaging and the UK needs to do more to counter it, or we will lose out in tourism. The next story will be the numbers. The next story will be the numbers that are affecting tourism. And I tell you, I've got another story for you here as well from Forbes magazine. And listen, before you apply for Idiot's Corner, you can't have it both ways. The reason why we know that crime is awful in London is because people keep getting their Rolexes stolen. And then Harry gets in touch to tell me, it's all very well if you're in a 5-star Mayfair hotel. Yeah, well, you can't have it both ways. People who are having Rolexes stolen are by definition considerably better off than almost everybody else. And Forbes magazine, which of course is dedicated to the interests of the wealthy, and guess what? The wealthy, one of the few things they use that you and I use as well, are pavements. The 100 best cities in the world to live, work and visit. 100 of them. Guess what city comes in 100th place? In Forbes magazine's top 100 cities in the world, guess what city comes in spot 100? Can you guess the 100th best city in the world in which to live, work or visit? And I can't find it now, so I'll tell you what came in 88th. It's Philadelphia in Pennsylvania. What city do you think came in 75th place of the best cities in the world to live, work and visit? Answer, Santiago in Chile. Can you see where we're going with this? We could be some time. Athens came 74th. Budapest in Hungary came 47th. Warsaw in Poland came 43rd. Milano in Italy came in at 36th. Oslo, the 24th best city in the world to live, work and visit, according to a ranking report by Forbes magazine. Melbourne, Australia in at 21st. I haven't heard any British cities yet. And on it goes, with London coming first. London. And I got accused of hyperbole earlier in the week when I called it the best place in the world to live, the best place on earth to live. It's a genuine opinion, but it's obviously not a fact. It's not something I can prove. It just is. It is a magnificent city. It is an objectively magnificent city. It is a city whose magnificence is obvious to anybody who lives here or spends a lot of time here. And the extraordinary phenomenon of online accounts managed by people who have never been here, or, and this is going to make an element of the phone in that we're about to have, or who are lying for clicks and kudos on the internet is now close to out of control. I spoke to Jimmy Wales, the founder of Wikipedia, recently. You can hear the conversation on Full Disclosure. And I can't remember whether he told me off air or on air, actually, but it's not a confidence that I'm breaching if he told me off air, that he has friends in Silicon Valley in the United States who say to him, God, how are you dealing with all the problems in London? And he says, well, I honestly don't know what you're talking about. It is extraordinary how social media has created this idea that London is some sort of hellhole, and that idea is being perpetrated in America, where school shootings are absolutely endemic, and gun crime is off the absolute charts. The murder rate, all violent crime in any city that you want to compare with London to America, there is no comparison to be made whatsoever. Now, I'm going to ask you why. No one says there isn't any crime. Of course they don't. But London does not have a particular problem. None of the statistics support the idea that they do. So why are people, up to and including Nigel Farage, putting so much effort into portraying London as something that it isn't? Why are they trying to turn tourists away from London? Why are they trying to create the notion that London suffers from levels of criminality that it simply doesn't? That's the question I've got for you. Why are they trying to do it? Why are they doing this? And you can come at it from either Farage and his mates. One of the councillors for his organisation claimed that every time her son gets on a train in London, the carriage is full of people wearing balaclavas. It reminds me of the time Farage complained that he couldn't catch a train because he got on a train and everyone was speaking a foreign language, which he thought was proof that they couldn't speak English. And you'd sort of think, well, I mean, A, you're lying, and B, your children speak foreign languages at home, you big old fraud. But you have this notion now that London has questions to answer, or that London has a particular problem, and it doesn't. So why are they doing it? Why are these traitors doing this particular treachery? 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. So, listen, some of it begins with Russian bots. As with all of the worst things on the social media, Russian bots get hold of the idea that London has a particular problem, or that London is an undesirable place to visit or to live, which is a position you can only hold if you neither live nor visit London, or you're a massive liar. If you're a massive liar, then you are likely to be a racist. Racism and lies go hand in hand. You cannot be a racist without being a liar. You cannot subscribe. Oh, by the way, I must give you the most disgusting example of racism that I've seen in a very, very long time, published in Michael Gove's Spectator this week. I must share that with you a bit later in the programme. But lying and racism go hand in hand, because racism is itself a lie. The idea that if you are of a certain ethnicity, you are more likely to commit a crime because of ancestral voices that you are listening to, or because of some innate characteristic unique to people with brown skin or black skin. It's obscene, but it's also deeply dishonest. So the lie got legs, it moves away from the Russian bots, and because London has a brown-skinned mayor, because Londoners have elected Sadiq Khan to be mayor of London on 3 separate occasions, that opens up an opportunity for liars and racists, or indeed for lying racists, whether they have their own radio show or whether they are simply operating on social media. Lying racists can tell racist lies about London, and they get magnified by the fact that we've got a Muslim mayor who reportedly wants to introduce Shakira law already has introduced Shakira law to countless corners of the capital. So you have 2 things going on here. There is crime in London, but the idea that London has a particular problem, or that London is being accurately portrayed, is one that sits simultaneously alongside the idea that it's too expensive to live here. You can't have it both ways. So here is the question, right? Why are they doing this? Okay? Why are people telling lies about London online and increasingly elsewhere? Why are people telling lies about our hometown? And I appreciate not everybody's listening in London, but then it is our capital city. I appreciate not everybody's listening in England, in which case it becomes the finest city in the world to live in, according to Fortune magazine. Talk me through the anatomy of the lies, okay? the anatomy of the lies. Talk me through how this happened, where it came from. Why are these people trying to undermine our economy? Why are these people like Nigel Farage trying to kill tourism in our capital city? Why are they trying to scare people out of a city that Forbes magazine has adjudged to be the best in the world in which to live, work or visit? Everywhere you go, you have evidence of how lucky we are to live on these streets. And there is inequality here, there is poverty here, there is violence here, there is crime here. You cannot have a conurbation of 20 million people, or whatever the actual figure is, without having bad stuff happening. But the evidence, if you care about such things, absolutely refutes the notion that we have a particular problem. It goes back to no-go zones, lies about no-go zones, and we could laugh at them. 9 million in London. I don't know where I got 20 million from. 9 million people in London, the official population. Of course, there are going to be some rotten eggs. But why would somebody who claims to be patriotic be so desperate to denigrate our capital city? I don't think it's an answer. I don't think it's a question that admits immediately or exclusively obvious answers. You know why Russian bots might try to do it. They're seeking to sow division. Best way you can sow division is through racial prejudice. Why are they doing it? Why are people lying about London on an industrial scale to the point where the general manager of the Dorchester Hotel is reporting guests arriving here and asking him to arrange private security to accompany them on the streets of the capital, and then coming back a couple of days later and saying, I don't need private security. I can't believe that. And the answer is, why did you believe that you needed private security? And the answer is because of all the stuff I've seen on TikTok or all the stuff I've seen on Twitter. What is it designed to achieve? Is a question I'd really like you to answer. Is it the same question as why are they doing it? I don't know. The other thing I wanted to do, and I haven't really managed. The other thing I wanted to do is push back against it. But I don't know how you do that. So if this was a television programme, and they did this in America, all the areas that Donald Trump described as war zones, I think it was Jimmy Kimmel, it was one of the late night hosts, invited people to send in pictures of the war zone where they lived. Actually, I think we should... Well, let's wait and see how much you've got to say about London, because we could expand it into America. Is it just the same thing as Donald Trump claiming that cities are war zones when they're not? But he wants to send in troops. He wants to send in the National Guard. Billy Bunchernumbers on Twitter with a bulldog avatar and 73 flags in his profile. He doesn't have the power to send the army into London to fight battles against people that don't exist. Donald Trump has a transparent agenda when he describes American cities as being war zones, and Jimmy Kimmel invited people to send in pictures of the war zone where they lived, and of course they sent in pictures of things like swimming galas and picnics and children's birthday parties and street festivals and I don't know, farmers markets. I don't know what the radio equivalent of that would be, but I do know this. I would rather live where I live than anywhere else in the world. I've always felt that way. Wherever I've lived in London, I've lived in smart bits and less smart bits. At the moment, I live in one of those magnificent London boroughs that sort of straddles both. But why do people tell lies about our home? What are they designed to achieve? 0345 6060 973. And remember, this is about convincing people that don't live here that it's awful. So it's not about what it's like to live in one of the beautiful bits of London or what it's like to live in one of the awful bits of London. Why are people trying to convince people who don't live here or who aren't visiting here that it's awful? You can't convince people who do live here that it's awful because we've got the evidence of our own eyes and ears. You can't convince people that do visit London regularly that it's awful because they've got the evidence of their regular visits. It is designed, and it starts online, but then it gets picked up by racist, lying former radio presenters. It starts online, and then it gets picked up by mainstream media, for want of a better word, and it is among the most treacherous and unpatriotic things that you could possibly imagine. Portraying a capital city as being scary or dangerous or somewhere that you don't want to visit. Somewhere that you don't want to visit. Why are they doing that? Why are they trying to turn London into a no-go zone based on lies? It's a good question, right? When you actually stop and think about why would you want to do this while simultaneously claiming to be patriotic? Why would you want to turn your own capital city into a no-go zone by lying about it? 0345 6060 973 is the number you need. It's 11:18.
James O'Brien on LBC.
19 is the time. You sort of noticed it happening and you thought, well, no one's going to take this seriously. And then, of course, you realise that if you're not spending a lot of time in London, you might actually believe the lies that are being perpetrated by various racist liars and traitors. But I don't know why they're doing it. And what left the door open to these lies? When you have, like, educated Americans labouring under the illusion that London is less safe than their own big cities, you know you've actually got a proper problem. And I don't understand why people have created this problem. I want you to tell me. I've got theories, but I want to hear yours. Sean's in Wembley. Sean, what would you like to say?
Morning, mate.
Hello.
I was born on the Boot Estate in Liverpool, in Norris Green, and it was voted the worst place in Europe to live.
Blimey.
And we got loads of abuse for it, loads of abuse. It was perfect. It was a lovely place to live. It was just got a bad reputation. I then moved from there when I was 18 to London, and I've lived here ever since. Got 3 kids, 4 grandkids. Just the best place to live. If it wasn't a good place to live, I'd move.
I mean, you would vote with your feet. So
I voted with my feet looking for a job when I was 18.
Fair enough.
You know, and I've been here. I've lived in. I'll tell you something funny. When I moved to London, we moved because we knew it was a good place to go to, and we got a job on the very first day that we got here. And then we lived in Alston, which was meant to have a bad reputation, which we found to just be full of working class people of all races and religions. It was an absolutely brilliant place to live. And then I met my missus, who lives in Wembley, and she comes under Brent, and that's supposed to be the worst borough to live in. And I've lived here for 38 years in Brent, and I've never had a problem.
Why are they lying about us?
I think a lot of people are jealous. I think a lot of people are jealous of London.
Does that lead to lies? I'm trying to think who I'm jealous of. I try to live a very zen existence these days, but if I'm jealous of someone, then I wouldn't lie about them.
Well, yeah. Do you know what though? There's horses for courses. There's so many weird people out there. You know, I've got people who've never been to London. I know people who've never been to London, who live in Liverpool, who've never been to London. And then when they do come down and they stay with us, and I take them out and I show them the sights, they love it. They absolutely love it.
And that is the point, isn't it? I mean, I know it's one story and the plural of anecdote is not data, but for the general manager of the Dorchester to weigh in on something like this is a moment. If he's got very, very rich guests turning up from overseas, convinced that they need to hire private security to accompany them on the streets of our capital, and then 2 days later coming back and saying, "Oh, by the way, I don't need the private security. I don't know where that came from," then damage is being done, not only to our reputation, but quite possibly to our economy as well. And it's being done deliberately. Listen, some people will be doing it for clicks and kudos. I get that. And people will post anything online in pursuit of clicks and kudos. But other people, public figures, people like Farage and his mates, why do they want London to be less economically successful? Why do they want the capital city of a country they claim endlessly and repeatedly to love to die or to wither or to suffer? I genuinely don't get it. Jealousy is the first answer we got from Sean. What would you put in that space? 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. Rosa is in Camberley. Rosa, what do you reckon?
I think it's racism. That sounds really simple, but hear me out.
Go on.
London is the most ethnically diverse part of the UK. It's probably one of the most ethnically diverse cities around. I don't know, but to me, to demonise London is admitting that multiculturalism works.
That's a really interesting point, isn't it? That idea of we can't sustain our white supremacy, we can't sustain our ludicrous hierarchies. We can't justify the discomfort or the madness we feel when we watch adverts with black people in them. We can't actually maintain our entirely bogus sense of superiority when we look at London and see what a proper melting pot looks like. And God forbid you have a Muslim mayor.
Yeah, indeed. But I really do think it's that simple. But it's such a big part of the far-right propaganda in the US as well. I'm not surprised that you've got these US elites with this idea that London is a dystopic hellhole that's unsafe. This is a very intentional narrative that's being peddled. And I do think if you look at who is peddling it, these are people who insist multiculturalism is unsustainable, that it doesn't work. London is the threat of a good example that actually they're wrong and it does work. London is a wonderful place.
It's the maddest thing in a way, isn't it? Because if you are really convinced that you're right about something, then you the last thing you'd do is lie. Or at least you'd recognise that the necessity of lying in order to sustain your worldview suggests that your worldview might not be entirely accurate. So you find a city where multiculturalism clearly and demonstrably works, and then you start lying about the fact that it doesn't, instead of wondering whether your attitudes or thoughts about so-called multiculturalism might be entirely bogus and mistaken. 25 minutes after 11, and presumably it gets more sinister. You know, when you have mainstream politicians talking about deporting people that have every right to be here, you have to pretend that they're causing problems that they're not causing. So the link between lies about London and racism is probably absolutely solid, isn't it? Unless you've got a better explanation. Why would people lie about this? Why would they lie about it? The criteria that Forbes magazine uses, they obviously... They have a prosperity index, and that is, unfortunately, immune to inequality. So sort of total prosperity doesn't get divided, I don't think, by the number of people who live here. But the other two things are lovability and livability. And, you know, in a way, that those are things that we should be both promoting and celebrating. Lovability and livability. Livability is going to look at things like everything from public transport right through to hospitality. Livability. Cost of living is high. Of course it is. It is everywhere. Property, particularly problematic in this city, and yet it's still the best place in the world to live, according to Forbes magazine. And even if you want to say, well, that's fine if you're rich, but remember the racist liars that we're talking about argue probably more passionately about how unpleasant this city is for rich people than they do about it being an unpleasant place for poor people. In fact, the kind of people who are wanging on about moving to Dubai or having their Rolexes stolen never, ever, ever, ever express a single scintilla of concern about poor people unless they're telling lies about immigration or trying to make them very, very cross about small boats. So why? How can someone simultaneously claim to be patriotic and tell lies about their own capital city, designed to make people who don't visit here or live here scared of it? What do they win by making people scared of London? John's in Islington. John, what would you like to say?
Hi, James.
Hello.
Love the show.
Thank you.
So I'll just give a tiny bit of context first. So I grew up in a council estate, went to a very multicultural school. I was the only white kid in my class sometimes. Grew up in a very Muslim area, and I always prided myself on loving London. I absolutely adored the city. I've never had a problem. And I walk down my street and get on with people of all religions, races, and whatever.
Yeah.
I I've got a master's degree, went and got a good job in finance, and my life has been very, very good. Got a nice place in central London. Anyway, so at some point over the last year, I started to feel this rage, and I started to have some quite abhorrent views. They borderlined on, there was a kind of ethno-preservationist element to it. There was complaining about London and saying it's full of delivery drivers and crime and it's a war zone, and just perpetuating lies about my own city and not my lived experience. And it got worse and worse to the point that my girlfriend of 10 years said, Hamish, I don't know if I want to be with someone who holds... John. I don't know if I want to be with someone who holds these views. And basically, I realised that I had been going down a rabbit hole of just stuff coming up in my feed, basically, and it started with a single click, and before I knew it, I was inundated with essentially right-wing propaganda from...
It looks real, though. It looks real.
No, but it's the thing, James. So I wasn't believing the evidence in my eyes and ears. I love this city. I walk around feeling safe, happy, love every element of multiculturalism, and but I started believing that something was terrible, even though my own eyes and ears told me it wasn't. So I believed rather than my own lived experience.
So how did you break the spell? What did you do?
My girlfriend said, you need to go on your feed and just say to YouTube, I'm a big YouTube person, say, don't show me this, don't show me this. And before I knew it, I was getting content about football, watches, and I completely, that dissipated all those views, which had been kind of, I would say an articulate, well-read person. Clearly. I was susceptible to being kind of brainwashed by a bunch of idiots.
Well, Frederick's been in touch. Their caller last week said that he knew the stats on crime were wrong because all of the violent clips on his social media posted every day proved it. He's using that as his news feed. I think I saw Musk boasting yesterday about Twitter being the most popular news feed in the world. It's not news. Because to be news, what you see, those clips of violence, A, you'd have to prove that they were in London and establish that they were in London, and of course some of them will be. But then B, you'd somehow have to balance it out with all of the examples of non-violence. Do you see what I mean? It's like if I eat an unleavened diet of Monster Munch, then I'm going to be very, very unhealthy. But if I eat a balanced diet and the occasional bag of Monster Munch, I'm not going to be very, very unhealthy. If I'm watching something that's utterly manipulated to create a certain feeling in me that's not real or true, the feeling is real or true, but the stuff that I'm watching is not representative or balanced or fair. The number of under 25s being murdered in London is the lowest it's been for 2 decades. The murder rate overall is lower than it is in percentage or per capita terms, is lower than it is. I mean, you'd be unsurprised to discover it's lower than New York, but it's lower than Brussels, Paris, Berlin, Madrid. And yet, as you say, you can spend a couple of days online and come away with the idea that it's World War III out there. Your girlfriend must be relieved.
Yeah, I mean, it really quickly dissipates, and honestly, my life, I'm believing myself again rather than what some complete idiots on some YouTube podcast are telling me who don't even live in London. And honestly, I'm back to walking down my street, loving everyone, just loving my life. I have a brilliant life, and I was made to believe I didn't by a bunch of complete idiots.
Well, made to believe you don't have a good life, you don't live in a good city, and of course that's corrected me a bit, has put me in my place a little bit, because you can live here and still believe what you're seeing online more than you believe what you see when you go out. Because it's all, I mean, it's a bit like the Daily Mail comment section, isn't it? It's a bit, oh, I don't mean you. No, it definitely is happening. It's not happening on my street, but it's definitely out there, and that's why I'm so cross about it. And that takes us back to the YouGov polling from last week, which found that immigration in general is the second most important thing in people's lives when they're asked what matters most to the country. But when you ask what matters most to them, it plummets down to 7th. Why is that? Probably the same reason, because people are being fed a diet of negativity without any leavening positivity, which is sort of heartbreaking in a way, but also treacherous. I mean, racist liars use the word traitor a lot, or Lord Haw-Haw a lot, but that's classic projection. And, accuse the people of doing what you are doing. It achieves 2 things. It demonises the opposition who are calling you out, and it also minimises or dilutes the impact when you actually start doing it yourself, like lying about election results or whatever. Accuse the opposition of doing something when they're not doing it, and then when you do it, the opprobrium, the condemnation, is somehow diluted. It's diminished. But that's what's going on here. I mean, it is kind of obvious, but why are they doing it? Why do people like Nigel Farage want people like John to be scared of his own streets? It is 33 minutes after 11. Lottie Morley has your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
I've got an analogy for you. It's a while since we came up with it. Well, the levers, I think, in the last hour are a pretty useful analogy. Here's a really, really good one, okay? Even though I say so myself. There is an old adage about journalism, which I rather like, actually, and it became so clear and obvious during the Brexit debate that it merits revisiting occasionally, possibly even regularly. And the idea is that if somebody tells you that it's raining, my job is to go outside and see whether or not it is actually raining. What you shouldn't do is simply believe that what somebody has told you. It's raining. It's tipping it down outside. You shouldn't go out. Stay in. It's a bit like London. You see that? Don't go there. It's absolutely tipping it down. So the job of a journalist is, of course, to go out and see whether or not it is actually raining. But what if you were online? What if you spent a few hours a day, as most people do these days, online? And the way, and this I hope won't come as a surprise to you, but it could do, one of the most insidious elements of online activity is what's best understood as the attention economy. So all of these platforms, all of them, are designed to keep you there for as long as possible. The only thing that you have of value that they want, unless you're putting your hand in your pocket to actually buy stuff that's advertised, which is obviously the ultimate goal, but in order to maximise the likelihood of that happening, they need you to stay tuned for as long as is humanly possible. I'm the same, actually. This isn't a criticism necessarily, it's a simple explanation. When I say something like, I'll tell you after the news, and then usually forget to tell you, but it's the same principle. My professional success increases not just the more people that listen to this programme, but the longer that you listen to this programme, the better it is for me. The better my numbers are, the more likely I am to get the pay rise I so obviously and richly deserve. The longer you listen, the happier I am. So I am constantly trying to encourage you to carry on listening by being charming and hilarious and informative and sarcastic. But algorithms, I don't have an algorithm. I don't have a computer program that is literally watching you individually. Imagine if I could get every single listener, 1.4 million brains, and I could analyse exactly what makes you stay tuned for longer and do more of it. To 1.4 million different people who are all on the same platform. This is bonkers, right? But this is real. So you're on YouTube, you're on TikTok, you're on Twitter, and the algorithm is crunching every single thing you do to work out what they can give you and show you that makes you watch for longer. It's not a coincidence that if, for example, I should do regular updates on my algorithms are so wholesome, you would not believe it. The thing I've got now is people who leave fake parcels on their doorsteps for thieves. You know, like an Amazon delivery, and then it blows up with pink dust. My algorithm's full of those at the moment. I went through a phase of people falling off things. Then I went through a phase of ping pong, table tennis, and now I've got and I love the reunions when the soldiers come back and surprise their family members. Don't tell me half of them are fake. I don't want to hear it. It's wholesome and I love it. But the thing that's now dominating my algorithm is people setting traps for thieves who are going to try and steal a package that's been left on your doorstep, and then just as they shove it into the back of their car, it explodes with bright pink dust. It's hilarious. Don't at me to tell me that it's dangerous or anything like that. Don't spoil it. Okay? Don't spoil it for me. That's what they're designed to do. So what if, this is important, come here a minute. What if you're watching rain and deciding what it's like outside your own house? Let alone you're watching it in, I don't know, Esher and deciding what it's like in London. You're watching it in Berkshire and deciding what it's like in London. You're watching it in Kidderminster and deciding what it's like in London. You are watching video after video after video after video of it tipping it down, absolutely pouring, raining cats and dogs in a place they are telling you is London. Some of the footage will be from London, but imagine if every single thing you saw on your screen was telling you it was raining in London. Now, if you had to go to London today, at the very least you would take an umbrella, right? But if you didn't have to go to London today, you wouldn't go because it's absolutely tipping it down. And that is how it works. That is it. That is the only analogy you will ever need. The job of a journalist used to be, still is, happily, in some quarters, including this one, to go outside and work out whether you're getting wet. To walk outside and see whether or not it is raining. Even perhaps to stroke a bench in order to see whether your fingers come up wet, or check the pavement for puddles, or have a little look at whether or not the windscreen wipers on the cars that are going past are still moving because it's only just stopped raining. That is what you're supposed to do. That is what honest people do. That is what good journalists do. Everybody says that it's raining. Is it? And that is what is happening to London on social media. All of these nasty, vicious, lying, racist accounts, whether they're real or not, are telling us that London is absolutely awful. All of the evidence points in the opposite direction. Don't ask me, ask the Metropolitan Police. 6% reduction in violent crime overall. That's in a city that's home to about 9 million people. Londoners are less likely to be a victim of violent crime than people across the rest of England and Wales. That's 26.4 offences per 1,000 people in London, 31.9 per 1,000 people across the rest of England and Wales. So where on earth is the idea that things are appalling coming from? Answer online. YouGov have looked at it, showing that the number of adults who thought crime was going up is 51%. Those who know that it's going down or think that it's going down is just at 7%. Why are they doing it? Okay? Idiot's Corner for Dal. Bury your head in the sand. There's no crime here. There is crime here, Dal. Let me explain to you how numbers work, mate. When I tell you that there are 26.4 offences per 1,000 people, it means that there are, wait for it, Dal, 26.4 offences for every 1,000 people. It doesn't mean, and you might just need to take that whopping great gobbet of wax out of your ears before I finish this sentence, it doesn't mean that there are naught offences per 1,000 people. When I say there are 26.4 offences per 1,000 people, it doesn't mean that I'm saying there are no offences per 1,000 people. I worry about Idiot's Corner sometimes. I might have to build an extension just for Dow. So nobody is saying there is no crime, you irredeemable flump. They are simply saying, A, it's going down, and B, it's nowhere near as bad as it is elsewhere, including in England and Wales. Never mind Paris, Brussels, New York, Berlin, Madrid. But you go back on your internet, mate. You look at more videos of it raining and fail to go outside into the sunshine. This isn't really working today because it is actually tipping it down outside as we speak. But that's why it's an analogy, not a bloody weather forecast. Why are they doing it? And second question, why does it work so well? And I'm not going to apologise. I normally apologise when I go off on one unexpectedly in the middle of an hour instead of taking calls. Sorry to Jeff, sorry to Lou. You'll be up next. After that, it could be Liz, it could be Rob, it could be Andy, it could be another Jeff, could be Peter. But this is really important, and I want to understand it. And sometimes I do my workings on air, because if I can work it out and explain it on air, then hopefully we can all come to a better grasp of what is actually going on. So the rain analogy works perfectly. You are sitting in a house in a town where it's not raining, but you're watching so many videos of thunderstorms that you're never going to leave the house again. You're certainly never going to visit. That's what they've done. So question one, which we're doing pretty well on, why are they doing this? Why are people who claim to be patriotic committing acts of daily treachery when it comes to our capital city? Question number two, why does it work? Why does it work? Why do people want to be terrorised? Why do people want to be frightened? Why do people want to believe that London is some sort of hellhole when it demonstrably, categorically and provably isn't? 0345 6060 973. And James, I take this. I know it's sent as a joke, mate, but you can. He says, if you tell me it's raining, James, then I'm just going to believe you. But you can believe me. Unfortunately, an awful lot of people telling everybody else that it's raining when it isn't are lying, and they know that they're lying, and I still don't completely know why. But I'm also baffled about the desperation to believe the liars. Saw it first on an industrial scale with Brexit, and now they know they were lied to, and yet they're still trusting the liars who've moved on to slagging off London. Riddle me that.
James O'Brien on LBC.
11:48 is the time. I stumbled across this yesterday, and I think I may have alluded to it or mentioned it to you, but not in particular detail. I think that the Spectator magazine, now edited by Michael Gove, has published the single most obviously and disgustingly racist thing that I can remember seeing, and I spend a lot of time covering this stuff. It's written by the wrongest man in the world, Daniel Hannan, one of the people who, of course, championed Brexit while pretending to reject the racism popularised and perpetrated by people like Farage with his hideous Breaking Point poster, and worse, of course, his comments about children having English as a second language in schools without mentioning that would include his own children, people talking foreign on trains without mentioning that would include his own family, all of the usual racist tropes that have grown, sadly, not shrunk, since the reality of Brexit became real. But Hanan's written something that I almost struggle to... Well, I struggle to believe that he would write it down without immediately deleting it out of shame. And I can't quite believe that Michael Gove, not, I grant you, a man who's previously proven himself to be possessed of a particularly well-functioning conscience, I can't believe that they've published it. And I will share it with you and explain why I think it's so disgusting shortly. And I wonder whether it's the sort of thing that would have been published in a country that hadn't seen huge swathes of the right wing, both on and offline, dedicate itself to pretending that London is a city with particular problems caused, the subtext or indeed the explicit explanation often being immigration or the presence of people with different coloured skin to Daniel Hannan. Do you know, I think he was born in Peru. So he is an immigrant, technically. And, of course, the only other thing you can think of, the only other Peru-born creature you can think of is probably Paddington Bear. It's almost as if Daniel Hannan has dedicated his life to undoing all the good work done by Paddington Bear when it comes to our perceptions of people who were born in Peru. I've also, when we're indulging in these cultural references, I've also got a lovely little bit of Coronation Street for you, and this is when it used to be funny. Okay, but first I must speak to Lou in Hampton Hill, because she's probably nodded off waiting so long to come on. Lou, why are they doing it?
Oh, hi, James. I've got a bit nervous.
It's only me.
My daughter's told me not to sound crazy because she's listening.
Okay, I will warn you if you're beginning to sound crazy, all right?
Okay, so I'll just give you a little bit of background. I grew up on the South Coast and I moved to London when I was 19. My family all stayed down on the South Coast.
Yeah.
I think there was probably one black kid in my school. I moved to Shepherd's Bush and had two beautiful mixed heritage children. And I grew up in a very West Indian environment, which I loved, and I loved Shepherd's Bush. I never felt scared. I would walk down the road late at night. I just love London, and I'm just used to London. Now, I've been racking my brains as to why someone that, for example, NF, Nigel Farage, why he would want to do the country in London down. I was thinking, why would he do that? You know, and I almost stopped and thought I might ask ChatGPT, but I think I've been thinking about this on my journey, and I've pulled over, by the way.
Thank you.
I think possibly, is it because if he says it's really bad, he can then be the great saviour you're gonna vote for because he's gonna change everything and make it much better? Could it be that?
Well, it's possibly part of it. Although you sort of sense that they've written London off, or London has to be siloed from the nonsense that they spout the rest of the time, because it proves that they're spouting nonsense. You know.
Honestly, they are. But what's so interesting?
I think his constituency has got the poorest estate in the whole of England in it, for example, and I never hear him talking about that.
No, but also what's really I found interesting is my sisters and mums still live down by the South Coast. It's a bit more mixed down there, but now. But they're coming up to see me next Friday, and my middle sister said to me, "Oh, you know, is it okay? Is it safe?"
Yeah.
And I said, I laughed because I said to her, "What makes you say that?" And she said, "Well, I've seen all these things, you know, on social media," and I thought, well, I haven't seen them, which is strange. But maybe that's... Well, I don't go on social media.
No, it's the algorithm. It's the algorithm.
Well, it's got to be. It's mad.
But it's why the queue for the ghost train is longer than the speak your weight machine. It's a human condition to almost revel in fear. And you can do it when it's on the screen because, you know, if someone says to you, oh, there's a mugger around the corner, no one's going to run around the corner in the hope of seeing the mugger. But if you watch violence on screen, it actually appeals to something visceral inside us, something primal that we want to watch more and more and more and more. Like we love being frightened. I guess it's why we watch horror films.
Maybe.
But we know that they're fiction when we're watching them. People end up thinking this is factual.
Yeah, I think the other thing is, James, we're all very privileged to be in London and be in that mixed environment that we don't almost notice it. So when like things like the black people thing on adverts, well, we don't notice it really anyway, because why should we? Whereas are you
telling me you don't sit there with your notebook putting a little tick on this page every time you see a brown person in an advert?
But it's so,
you weirdo.
I find it so strange.
It is just strange.
You know,
well, it's not strange. It's racist.
But it's also because, James, like, for example, I know my sisters are not racist.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
But my sister has even said to me, well, there's loads of black people now on adverts, and she's noticed that because
someone's told her to.
Well, she doesn't see it often. Do you see what I mean? So she's not in her village or town. There's not loads of black people.
Oh, but also, what do you say then? Do you say so what, or why does that? I mean, in a non-aggressive fashion, do you say what? Why does that matter? Why?
I said to her, I think you've noticed it because you're just. I mean, she's definitely not racist. Her son's married to a black lady, and my children are black. So, but it's just. Maybe it's unconscious bias, actually. Maybe it is.
Well, she's been told to notice it by that dreadful Sarah Poaching woman. She's been told not just to notice it, but to feel mad about it. Another politician from that party called Layla Cunningham is the one that I couldn't quite place earlier. I want to protest in the streets. I'm angry at what they've done to this country. Unspecified they, I think. And here is a line that is, I mean, extraordinary in its absurdity, its dishonesty, and its disgracefulness. I was in Chicago and New York on holiday, as my husband's American, and so many people were like, oh my God, we've heard about what's going on in the UK. Are you guys okay? And instead of saying, well, hello, person from Chicago, let's sit down and compare statistics, shall we? What are we going to start with? School shootings or violent crime on the streets? Or should we start with the murder rate? Oh, hello, New Yorker, who believes that London is unsafe. Shall we start with the statistics, the facts, the evidence and the detail? Or shall we go onto your social media account and believe all the bilge that has been put there by liars like me? Absolutely extraordinary. And she is the one who went on to say, if I'm on the train with my son and he sees someone in a balaclava, he's petrified, and that's been allowed to proliferate. When is the last time you saw someone on a train in a balaclava? Answers on a postcard, please. But that idea of being told by people in New York and Chicago that London is a scary and dangerous place, and as an elected politician in Britain, not actually pushing back and explaining, that's Lord Haw-Haw territory. That is siding with people who are lying about your own country and not challenging people who have believed the lies. That's absolutely extraordinary. Should probably get our own show on GBB soon. Thank you, Lou. Liz is in Shepperton. Liz, why does it happen? Why are they doing it, and why does it work?
I think, you've taken it out.
Well, we're never going to find out, because that phone line is absolutely awful. We'll try and repair it if we can without running out of time. But in the meantime, Coronation Street's very funny, very good at this. So there's always been a sense. Remember, I grew up in Kidderminster, which is very parochial, very provincial town. I love it, but I live in London. It's not a coincidence. And London's always had that slightly, what's the word that I want? It's always had a slightly intimidating air to it. The less time you spent in London, the easier you are to persuade that it's scary.
I'm on my way to London.
London? She's on her way to London. London?
I'll go to London this afternoon. I'll be out your hair then.
London? University College London.
London?
Going to London.
London?
Going where?
London.
London?
Might give London a go.
London?
I've been banging on the Barlow's door for ages. There's no answer.
No, she's in London.
London?
I'm staying here a few days, then I'm moving to London. I've got a job interview on Monday.
London?
London?
Why are you saying it like that?
Why are you saying it like that? It's lovely that. I could name probably 3 or 4 of those actors off the top of my head. Johnny Briggs and Helen Worth were definitely in there. I think Sally Lindsay was as well. But that was put together on social media because it's funny. Because London kind of just feels really big. And big stuff can sometimes feel scary. But that's sweet and nice. Do you know who I've just thought of in the final minutes of this hour? And we're back after the news with yet more joy and entertainment. Dick Whittington. We need more Dick Whittington, don't we? And less Layla Cunningham. The streets may not be paved with gold, but my goodness me, you'd rather be here than Chicago or New York or any of the other 99 cities in Forbes magazine's guide to the top 100 cities in the world. Where? London? 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 London comes top.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It's 3 minutes after 12. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. What has a pile of old rope and a banana got in common? Answers on a postcard, please. It is literally a pile of old rope. And it was literally a banana. The banana sold for a fortune. Do you remember this? We talked about it at the time. So someone essentially they gaffer taped a banana to the wall, didn't they? Maurizio Catalan, I think was his name, and the artwork was called Comedian, and it was literally a banana gaffer taped to the wall. I love these stories because it wasn't even the same banana or gaffer tape. So I did it. Do you know the first time we did this? This is really interesting. I can't remember whether I spotted this last time, but what were they called? What were they called? Like you'd buy something. Was it a non-fungible token or something like that? And I sat here absolutely convinced that you weren't buying anything of value at all. And it happened for a while. People were paying paying quite significant sums of money for a non-fungible token. In fact, at 4 minutes after 12 on Friday, I think my first question for you is just remind me what a non-fungible token actually was, using words. Okay, so using words, remind me what a non-fungible token actually was, because I sat here many moons ago suggesting that people were spending money on nothing. And I'm pretty sure that we've been proved right, haven't we? People who paid significant sums of money for, off the top of my head, Andy Murray's Wimbledon victory. How can you buy Andy Murray? I was confused at the time. I'm even more confused now because I can't fully remember what it was I was confused about. They were definitely called NFTs, non-fungible tokens. And I'm pretty sure one of them because that was when I thought, oh, Andy Murray's a sensible bloke. He wouldn't have got caught up in some old nonsense. He wouldn't have got mixed up in some old tut. And then we started thinking about it. A non-fungible token. I think someone bought Andy Murray's Wimbledon victory, and I said, "What have they actually bought? They bought the moment. Bought the moment. London. They bought the moment. What do you mean? This isn't necessarily what the hour is going to be about, but I think it's relevant. So I'm looking at a picture of a banana gaffer taped to a wall, and I am remembering that in the end, somebody paid quite a lot of money for it. I think he did 3. 2 were purchased for $120,000 each at the original art gallery. The third went for $150,000 a few weeks later. I think there may have been even a bigger one that were... Yeah, there you go. And then there was a massive sort of media brouhaha about it in November of last year. And it went for... Can this be true? $5,200,000, and you can stick another million on that for fees if it's gone at auction. And it turned out that the person buying it was a cryptocurrency entrepreneur who went on to eat the banana at a press conference. But he retains the right to recreate the artwork at any time. So he has spent, I don't know, what. I love this feeling I've got now. I actually really... I wonder if I could sell this feeling to you for $1 million. This feeling that you've got now of me describing something to you and you being certain that I'm describing nothing. So I am describing something to you and I am certain that I am describing nothing. But it can't be nothing because I'm describing something. Okay, so I'm describing a banana that's gaffer taped to the wall. We can agree about that. But I'm also describing something that is worth, in the sense that somebody is prepared to pay this for it, which means it's worth it. It's worth $5,200,000. It is simultaneously worth nearly $5.5 million, and it is a banana gaffer taped to a wall that he's eaten but still owns. So the first thought that occurs to me in the context of why this feeling is so... What's the word that I want? What is this feeling that we've both got now? Well, I describe somebody actually disproving the old proverb and having their cake and eating it. He had his banana and he ate it, and he still has his banana. Because in return for $5.5 million, he is allowed to recreate the artwork at any time. Between you and me, I think he'd struggle to sell it on for $5.5 million. I certainly don't think he'd make much of a profit. But what's this feeling that we've got now, talking about this? I bought Andy Murray winning Wimbledon, said somebody who paid money for a non-fungible token involving Andy Murray winning Wimbledon. There were others as well. I'll give you some examples in a minute. It was big news for a while. Do you remember? It was a bit like tulip fever. And then the banana boy came along. What is it that we're discussing here? I've no idea. But the latest story that fits into this category involves an artist who sort of takes it even further by filling an art gallery in central London with 10 tonnes of old rope. That's a lot of rope. 10 tonnes of old rope. And David Shrigley is an artist that almost fits into the mystery and the confusion that we're articulating. If you want to buy it, it will cost you £1 million. He says it's obscene, ridiculous and funny. I want to pick it apart, untangle its conceptual threads. But does he? Or is he just passing judgment on people who spend millions of pounds on metaphorical old rope? So he's put literal old rope in an art gallery. It's work on the proviso that someone does pay £1 million for it. Okay, in the same way that someone paid $5.5 million for a banana gaffer taped to a wall. And somebody paid hundreds, tens, hundreds of thousands of pounds to own Andy Murray winning Wimbledon by way of something called a non-fungible token. What the heck is the phone in here, lads? What are they buying? All three of those examples. Someone pays £1 million for, I don't know how much 10 tonnes of old rope would cost on the open market, but I am willing to wager it would not be £1 million. Eleanor points out that's heavier than a Tyrannosaurus Rex, which is an interesting metric by which to judge weight. It's a bit like the way in which journalists always judge distance by Wembley Stadium or double-decker buses. That's 48 double-decker buses. So that weighs more than a Tyrannosaurus Rex, apparently. And it's worth £1 million, kind of. It isn't worth £1 million until someone pays it. And the minute they pay it, as with the banana, it's worth £1 million. A banana gaffer taped to a wall is worth $5.5 million. But if I gaffer taped a banana to this wall now, it would not be worth $5.5 million. When Maurizio, let me get the lad's name right, at least, when Maurizio Catalan gaffer taped 3 bananas to a wall with gaffer tape, he sold them for, respectively, 120 and 130 grand. And then someone else sold it on, one of them on, and it wouldn't have been the same banana or the same gaffer tape. And then it got sold, one of those 3 got sold for $5.5 million. I don't want this to be a commentary on how stupid it is with poverty in this world. Obviously, I care about all that, but it's not, it's a bit, with respect, it's a bit obvious. People are going hungry and someone spent $5.5 million on a banana. Yeah, I know. And the unlikely event that anyone listening to this programme is unaware that hunger exists, even within these islands, let alone overseas, then you're probably wasting your time and mine by getting in touch with the programme to tell me that people are spending $5.5 million on a banana while hunger and food banks exist. What I really want to know is what they're paying for. Go on. This is one of those hours where I kind of flirt with oblivion. I flirt with an empty switchboard between now and one. That excites me. That idea that no one's going to ring because the question is so bonkers. You've never let me down yet. One day you will. What am I buying? If I spend £1 million on, say, £5,000 worth of old rope, what am I buying? If I spend $1 million on a banana gaffer taped to a wall that I'm allowed to eat and then replace with my own banana and gaffer tape and it retains its value somehow, what am I actually buying? And slightly less philosophical, what were non-fungible tokens, and am I right to knit them into this conversation? Am I right to knit? Did anybody buy one? Did you buy a non-fungible token? I bet you feel silly now. So let's be 100% clear that I've got it right. My memory is correct of what, because you never hear about them now, do you? I don't know why Andy Murray keeps popping up in my head. Probably because of all those dog food adverts he's doing. I can't walk past the bus shelter at the moment without seeing Andy Murray flogging dog food. But dog food is a thing, right? You know, dog food is a thing. A non-fungible token. I don't even know what it was. So, those three examples, what are they buying? Okay? 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. The banana that was gaffer taped to the wall, the non-fungible tokens that were everywhere for a while, just 2 or 3 years ago, and finally, the 10 tons of old rope currently residing in a prestigious London art gallery, at the Stephen Friedman Gallery in London. The exhibition has just received 4 stars. I mean, I could almost do that as a phone-in. The exhibition has just received 4 stars from The Guardian's art critic. What for? I mean, I'm not one of those people, even as I get older and move into the generation when I could be one of those people. I'm not one of those people who sits here going, oh, it's a load of old rubbish, it's modern art, it's nonsense. I know what it is. I know why the artist does things to create thoughts in our head. The artist does things to provoke feelings and thoughts, and whether it's a sort of Turner landscape or a Damien Hirst shark or a banana gaffer taped to a wall, I know what they would tell me they were trying to do. All 3 of those artists would tell me they were trying to do the same thing. But at the moment, I only believe 2 of them. I only believe Damien Hirst when he's telling me what his shark's about, and JMW Turner when he's telling me what that landscape is doing. I don't believe this dude when he's telling me that the banana gaffer taped to a wall is designed to elicit similar responses or comparable responses. The rope is a bit different. The rope makes me think things other than what a load of old tut. But £1 million? What if I paid £1 million for £5,000 worth of old rope? What am I buying? What are they selling? 0345 60 60973. I don't know if I can ask you what your responses to this artwork is, because you can't see it at the moment. But let me paint you a picture. Here is a pile of old rope. Close your eyes. It's about my height. Weighs more than a Tyrannosaurus Rex. You'd be surprised how heavy rope is, especially if it's wet. What does it matter? What is it designed to do? And I keep saying I'm not one of those people that just goes, oh, flipping heck. A bit like Nouvelle Cuisine, we better stop for fish and chips on the way home. Modern art, eh? I could do that myself. I don't think I'm one of those people. I hope I'm not one of those people. I feel differently about the art than I do about the banana, about the rope than I do about the banana. But why do I? Why do I feel differently about a pile of old rope than I do about a banana gaffer taped to a wall? I think what we have is... And no, I didn't know I had so much to say about this either. I think what we have is a suspicion of, quotes, art, end quotes, that we think we could do ourselves. Right? But that, you could almost bring people like Matisse into that category, or Picasso. But if it's modern art, and we think we could do it ourselves, we struggle to see artistic value in it. Right? I mean, if you want to get really meta, why is a brilliant forgery worth so much less than the original? But we won't go there today, unless you really want to, in which case you can. But the idea that I could gaffer tape a banana to a wall, why won't anybody give me $5 million? There's an entire book called Why Your 5-Year-Old Could Not Have Done That, Modern Art. And I haven't read it, but it speaks to what I'm trying to describe, doesn't it? There is a sense, we have a sense that if we could do it ourselves, it can't possibly be worth that sort of money. So you go to the Louvre and have a look at the art that hasn't been nicked, and you never think... you go to the Sistine Chapel, right? Go to the Sistine Chapel and look up. Spoiler alert, amazing paintings on the ceiling. You would never stand there thinking, I don't know what all the fuss is about. I could have done this last Sunday afternoon. What are you paying for? Right, we're about to find out whether anybody else finds all of these questions and meanderings anywhere near as engaging and fascinating as I do.
James O'Brien on LBC.
20 minutes after 12. Listen, sometimes when you send me messages that I think are evidence that you haven't understood what I'm talking about, I get cross with you. I used to get cross with you. Now I realise I've done something wrong. I've made a mistake. Listen, of course... this artwork is a play upon the old phrase, money for old rope. Of course, that is exactly what David Shrigley is intending when he puts a £1 million price tag on 10 tonnes of old rope on display in an art gallery near you, or not near you. It's in London. London! And of course that is what he's doing. So sorry, I should have made that clear. I know what the joke is, and I presumed everybody would, but some people are pointing it out to me as if we didn't both know what it was, so that's my fault for not making it clearer. And thank you for getting in touch to double check that we all knew what was going on. What am I buying if I buy that pile of old rope? What am I buying if I buy a banana gaffer taped to a wall? What was I buying if I bought a not? Because we were right about NFTs. That's why I'm so fascinated by this today. You sort of think, well, I can't be right about art. But we were right about non-fungible tokens. What is going on? Phil's in Woking. Phil, what would you like to say?
James, second-time caller, long-time listener.
You pick your moments. What was the last thing you rang in about?
I think it was about care homes or something along those lines.
So you've gone from care homes to the nature of commoditised art.
I'm questioning my life choices by sitting in a lay-by talking about the rope.
What did you do today?
I'm normally shouting about GBBs and reform at you, but here I find myself. Anyway, yes. I was talking to a researcher, and I think, quite honestly, I'm going to quote Gary Stevenson here.
Okay, good.
I think it's a little bit sort of like the asset mentality, right? So essentially you've got all this cash, and look, I'm very much a capitalist. If you've got your money, fair play, you've earned it. However you've done it. Now these guys could be a complete obscure name, and suddenly they've bought for $5.5 million a banana gaffer taped to a wall or a pile of old rope, and suddenly their name's out there.
Yeah. All right. Pause. Stop. Let me stop you there. Okay. Yeah. That works for this crypto dude who spent $5.5 million on it. It doesn't work for the three people who spent $120,000 or $140,000 on it the first time round.
Well, maybe it does, but
no, it doesn't. Okay, what are they called?
Well, exactly. Well, to be honest with you, I can't even tell you who the $5.5 million guy is, James. I can't. But I think it's about. I've
got his name in front of me, but I'm not going to say it out loud for precisely the reasons you just said. Because that's what he wants. That's what he wants.
And that can be the only reason, in my view. Because I mean, look, unless there is, I can't wait to hear what other people say. But in my view, I'm looking at it and I'm saying, well, what other reasonable, rational sort of mindset that you have, unless, as your researcher quite cleverly point out to me about art generally and what's my take on art generally. Now that's a tricky one, and I think it's subjective. So this is about a subjective mentality, but I think
so it's about ownership for you more than anything else. Ownership and the attendant celebrity stroke notoriety.
Yes, Yeah, and I mean, when it comes to the £1 million, I was watching a segment on one of the news channels. I don't know which one to believe half the time, but the rope, the money for old rope, was just, my jaw was on the floor. And I mean, watching the guy, the presenter actually asked him, "Are you taking the proverbial pee?" I don't know if you saw that, you know.
No, I didn't.
And he almost sniggered and said, "Well, you know," he may as well admitted to the fact that he is.
But I like that. I like that, because I mean, it has actually got me thinking, and it has actually got us talking, and that has a value, a social value. Itself.
I turned to my partner on the sofa as we watched it, and I said, "Love," I said, "if I said to you, I'm going to collect a pile of old rope and stuff it in a local gallery, I think that you would think I'd lost my mind." So you know,
not if you came home with £1 million, she wouldn't.
No, you're right. You're right. She probably we'd be marching off to get married that day.
We still don't know. There's a sort of air of permanence. There's an air of ownership. Something philosophy. I mean, there it is. There, I mean, he's kind of got something, Phil. But what? Pin it down. And I'm not wrong about the NFTs. Donald Trump launched some. A collection of digital trading cards depicting him in various guises, including a superhero, astronaut and NASCAR driver. Do you remember when we thought this stuff was funny? Before we realised it was actually indicative of an imminent dystopia. So you could buy this. If you bought a non-fungible token, you would own the original digital image. What? I still don't really understand what that means. So can I get the picture on my screen of Donald Trump dressed up as a cowboy? Yes, of course you can. Do I own... No, you don't own the original digital... Why would I want to own the... Short answer is because I think it's going to be worth more than I paid for it tomorrow. Right? But even then, the question becomes why. We're not doing quite Emperor's New Clothes, are we? What would be the fairy tale or the analogy that fits this best, where something is worth money just because I say so, and then we sell it on for more than we paid for it because we've successfully... I'm reminded of Tom Sawyer charging people to paint his fence. He's such an extraordinarily articulate young man in Mark Twain's novels that he was charged with painting a fence as a chore, and he was such a good salesman that the people who stopped by, his friends who stopped by to tease him for having to paint a fence, he persuaded them that painting the fence was such an extraordinary pleasure that they then paid him to borrow his paintbrush and paint the fence. So the chore was completed and he made a profit. Why am I thinking of that at the moment? I do not know. Ben is in Tamworth. Ben, what would you like to say?
Hi, James.
Hello,
it's a
Ben.
pleasure to speak to you again.
You're very kind.
We spoke about Trigger's Broom many years ago.
And is that the last time you rang in?
No, we've spoken about a couple of other things since then.
But Trigger's Broom is what Keith thought I was going to be talking about when I mentioned the NFT. So Trigger's Broom, well, you tell the story. Tell people what Trigger's Broom is for people who don't know.
Well, Trigger's Broom, the joke behind it was he claimed that he had the same broom through his whole working life, but it had 7 different handles and 8 different brush heads, so it can't be the same broom.
It's such a good joke, isn't it? I love it.
Fantastic.
It's one of the funniest things.
Now, the thing is, though, that diverges from NFT slightly, because an NFT would tell you that wasn't the original broom because it didn't have the same handle and didn't have the same brush head.
Yeah.
If the handle had its own NFT, which is basically a digital receipt that is verifiable that says that is the original one, any new broom handle that was put on, someone would say, no, that's not got the NFT, that's not got the receipt.
But it's still a different broom handle.
Well, exactly. And that's the point. It's not verifiable.
So it was a massive scam then, really?
Well, the whole point of an NFT is it is a piece of data, whether it be a picture, a piece of music, a script, a written piece of text.
No. This is where I diverge, because I understand exactly what you're saying, and I'll read you a quick message from Joe as well. Imagine NFTs being like a super rare baseball card from the 60s that's now worth millions. It's basically a digital version of that which can't be replicated. It's like a sci-fi collectible card. But it's not, because if I want to buy a piece of music, the original piece of music, it's because the piece of music is brilliant and historic.
Right, but
an NFT is not brilliant or historic.
Well, it can't. Well, that's subjective.
It's not.
That's completely.
You've literally just made it. How can it be brilliant and historic? Well, you made it yesterday on your computer.
Yeah, well, at some point, Shakespeare wrote his first book, and probably someone said, "No, that's quite average. That's not going to be historical, brilliant." Or
at which point, no one would have
time.
paid $5 million for it, but now they would because it's proven itself. But these NFTs have not. A picture of Donald Trump dressed as what has? What's gone up in value?
What's gone up in value?
Yeah, from the world of non-fungible tokens.
Off the top of my head right now,
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you, but like...
And I'm not going to badger you, but I'm going to cautiously suggest none of them have.
Well, but they have... certain ones did at certain points in time.
But they haven't now. It's over. It's dead.
Well, no. Hold on. Everything goes in cycles and ebbs and flows. Gold has just hit an all-time high a couple of weeks back.
Desperately
and it's now
trying to think of something that's worth nothing now. That used to be worth a lot.
And then at some point in the future, gold might be worth more than it was.
It's not like gold. It is like gold.
But no, I'm trying to explain.
I know you are. You're doing a good job.
No, prices go up and down all the time. Just because NFTs are...
Gold's never been worth nothing.
No, but they're not. Certain NFTs, like take the Trump cards. When they first came out, they went up in value. Now they're down in value. Personally, I think they'll stay down in value. But who knows? Maybe Trump will do something amazing, and it'll turn out that he's not a sex offender or something, and the value of the cards will go up again. I don't think that's going to happen, but stranger things have happened.
Okay. I don't know whether we need to be all legal about it. Of course, Trump has described himself as a sex offender, but he's never actually been convicted in a court of sex offence. He sued a woman who accused him of sex offending for libel and lost. But technically, I suppose we should clarify that because he seems to be quite litigious, doesn't he? Although fair play to the BBC for telling him to sling his hook when it comes to his ludicrous $1 billion damages claim. I disagree with you, Ben, and I know why I disagree with you, because I think that almost everything fits your analysis, but some things don't. I don't think anybody ever in the history of humanity will ever pay more than $5.5 million for that bloke's banana.
For that instance,
and I don't think NFTs are going to go up in value either. I think everyone's realised it was all a load of old nonsense.
I don't know. Look, you could be right, but the point I was trying to make with Trump is just based on news cycles, based on trends and fads, things move up and down in value.
That's what I mean. Right. That's why I said I think your analysis applies accurately to almost everything else, but not to the. Oddly, that's why I thought of them today when I saw these two artworks. Saatchi, one of the Saatchis made a ton of money out of buying stuff that other people thought was worthless, but he saw something that nobody else saw, and it all went rocketing up in value. And that idea of art being worthless if we think we could make it ourselves is clearly wrong, and yet it feels right. This is from Alex. I stared at a Turner landscape for hours, knowing that 1, I cannot create that. 2, I will never own such an original. 3, in case of owning it, would I still be able to cherish it like I do in a gallery or a museum? The motivation of the buyers is simply to signal to the world that they can afford it. It's an exercise in ego stroking. Up to a point, yes. Except that the NFTs being the exception to the rule, they normally expect it to go up in value, and in these occasions it doesn't. I just find it all fascinating. It's such a sort of weird reflection on the human condition. Thank you, Ben. Tim Humphries here now with your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
35 is the time. Okay, I'm going to be incredibly boring now. What do you mean? As usual. Tulips are an example, writes this Blue Sky, of things that were massively valuable but are now really cheap. That's not actually true. Deborah Mogatch wrote a brilliant novel that got turned into a film called Tulip Fever, but actually there's a historian at, I think, King's or UCL, who dug into it, and Tulip Mania or Tulip Fever was nothing like what everybody thought it was. So it was supposed to be this idea that tulips in 17th century Holland, 17th century Netherlands, sort of inexplicably and immediately became immensely valuable and then suddenly didn't. The bubble burst, the bottom fell out of the market. But the reality was much duller than that. I'm good, but I'm not that good. I can't remember exactly what the reality was, but you can look it up. Consider that to be your homework for the weekend. But there must be something that goes from being incredibly valuable and then is permanently worthless forever. I mean, that is where my thoughts have taken me as we discuss the latest example of somebody selling a pile of old rope for a huge amount of money in the context of modern art, although in this case it is literally a pile of old rope. What are they selling? What are you buying? And the NFTs, Ben's best efforts notwithstanding, I think we're right that they were... I mean, some examples, not just the Donald Trump one, because if Donald Trump's involved, then there's probably some sort of sharp practice not far behind. An animated GIF of Nyan Cat, which is a meme, sold for over $500,000. I mean, what do you think that is worth now? Seriously. An NFT by a digital artist called Beeple sold for £50 million, setting a new record for digital art. Is that the same as an NFT? Yes, it is. I mean, what do we think that's worth now? I just can't quite believe that much of it is worth anything. So what did people think they were buying? And is it the same as what they're buying when they buy a pile of old rope, or indeed a banana gaffer taped to a wall? Andrew is in Edinburgh. Andrew, what would you like to say?
Yeah, I have a slightly humorous story to tell you.
I'll be the judge of that, Andrew. Carry on.
Well, I was, and as an impoverished artist 30-odd years ago, I was on the board of a gallery in London which showed avant-garde work.
Okay.
And one exhibition was the exhibition of Martin Creed, who you may remember won the Turner Prize
light
about
bulb.
30 years ago for the light bulb going on and off.
Yeah.
But before it got to the Turner Prize, it was exhibited in the gallery, which I was part of, and actually helping clean it up and get it ready for the exhibition. And I walked into the gallery, but before it opened to the public, to see the janitor's cupboard open with a light bulb going on and off. So I went in, turned the light bulb off and closed the door, only to be met by consternation from Martin Creed saying I had ruined his artwork. But further than that, I came out of it, I had a lucky ending out of it, because also in that exhibition was his bump on the wall, which was simply a plaster bump, which was the size of about 2 kilogram bags of 1 kilogram bags of sugar, just stuck on the wall. And when the exhibition was over, it was stuck in that same janitor's cupboard. And, 10 or so years later, I was told to dispose of it, have it if I wanted, and dispose of it. And I thought, well, I wonder if this is worth anything. Yeah. Because here it was selling then, his works were selling for...
I think the Tate Britain bought the light one, didn't they?
Yeah. Yeah, and
light
so
bulb.
I phoned his gallery, Hauser and Worth, who are the ones that Princess Eugenie is working for, are just being done for dealing with Russians against all the regulations. I phoned them.
Why is everyone, even on this phone-in, I've had more concern about legal problems with what callers are saying on the radio on a phone-in about bananas than I have on phone-ins about the actual behaviour of politicians in the first 2 hours. I think I've seen the story you're referring to. Please don't refer to it again until I've double-checked. I think we're okay. So you phoned the gallery, and what did they tell you?
About the bump on the wall, I said I had it.
An original Martin Creed?
Yes, and they said, it's one of 6. It's worthless.
Oh.
And I said, oh. They said, but do you have the accompanying sheet of paper that goes with it? And in a brown envelope I opened up, I had a sheet of foolscap paper which gave descriptions on how to make the bump in the wall.
Right.
Was signed by Martin Creed and was one of 6. It was an edition of 1 of 6. And I said, I have that.
Yeah.
And they said, oh, we'd be very interested in buying that.
Go on.
Because it gives you the right to make the bump in the wall.
Yeah.
And I had looked up, and they were selling their other bump in the wall for about $90,000.
Wow.
And it was 1 of 6, so they'd made $500,000 out of it. And I said, well, will you give me $90,000?
Yeah.
And they said, no way. I said, oh, half, $50,000. And in the end, they gave me $30,000 for a sheet of paper and told me to dispose of the bump on the wall, which I put in the bin.
So the only thing worth money was the deed of ownership, so to speak.
It was the right to make, not even a deed of ownership.
No, it's not a deed of ownership because there's nothing there. There's nothing there.
Yeah, it was the right to make it, rather like the banana, the right to recreate it.
But this is insane.
Yeah.
I mean, this is real. I think I'm going to give you a Ray Liotta. I think because this is madness. It's just one of the best stories I've ever heard. But somewhat disappointingly, I'm absolutely no clearer about what the hell is going on. I just need to clarify something. Hang on. I don't want anyone to get sued. So the art gallery that you mentioned, Hauser and Worth, has been charged with breaking Russian sanctions. The case is ongoing, and it certainly hasn't been concluded. They certainly haven't been found to have breached Russian sanctions, but it was reported earlier today, they have been charged with breaking Russian sanctions. So I'm more than happy to clarify that. It follows an investigation by HM Revenue and Customs and allegations that the gallerists made available a painting to a person connected with Russia. The case proceeds to Westminster Magistrates Court. But, I mean, good for you, mate.
Good. Can I get my Ray Liotta? That would be even better, because I listen to you every single day.
But do you get what if you get a certificate? Could this be a non-fungible token?
Yes, I would quite like a certificate.
If we issued everyone who gets a Ray Liotta with a certificate of ownership, they could play the Ray Liotta. See, I'm not even joking. This seems to me to fit a similar space to what we've been talking about. It's a very rare gift, this.
Absolutely. And I'm going to have one now, I hope.
Oh, go on then.
I'm Ray Liotta, and you're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. If you build it, they will come.
That's amazing. Are you doing art at the moment, or are you just cleaning the windows?
No, I'm now 70, in my 70s. So
yes.
I spend all my time trying not to do
No, I meant literally now, Andrew, because there's quite a lot of clatter in the background. I didn't mean generally in life.
Sorry. My floor, I always talk on the phone walking, and my floor it's a very old Edinburgh house. It's very
lovely.
creaky floorboards.
No, I love it. I just like a little bit of context. I like to paint pictures on the radio, and ideally provide them with a certificate of ownership and get 30 grand for my trouble. Imagine flipping that 30 grand in a cupboard. No wonder he's got a lovely mansion in Edinburgh. It's 12:43. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. No one ever goes, Edinburgh? You never get that on Coronation Street. He's going to Edinburgh. Edinburgh? It's just London. I'm off to London. London! If you've no idea what I'm talking about, remember, you can pause and rewind live radio on Global Player, and it's quite an amusing little segment just between 11:45 and 12, when we were discussing the racist liars, traitors and various Lord Haw-Haws who persist in portraying our capital city, the English capital city, as being some sort of hellhole, or in Nigel Farage's weasel words, lawless, when the opposite is the case. Well, it's not completely free of crime, but it's considerably preferable to almost any other comparable city you care to mention. In fact, if you were to refer to Forbes magazine's survey this week of the finest 100 cities in the world in which to live, work or visit, London comes top. Weird, that. Bad news for the traitors. More on this after this.
James O'Brien on LBC.
47 is the time. I got more calls on this, but I do really want to tell you this, because sometimes I forget my hooks and teasers, and it's all sort of fun and games, but this is really serious. So the world's wrongest man, Daniel Hannan, and as with all of the worst contributors to public policy in this country over the last 10 years, he was put in the House of Lords by Boris Johnson. Has written an article for Michael Gove's Spectator, because, of course, if you're responsible for everything from Brexit to VIP, PPE cronyism during COVID, you get rewarded in this country with either jobs or titles or both, in which he talks about British criminals, violent British criminals, who are not white. And he writes, they grew up watching Blue Peter, but they heard ancestral voices prophesying war. The implication or the intention of that line being that if you are black or from an ethnic minority, then you are genetically predisposed towards violent crime because of the ancestral voices that you can hear in your head. It is an intervention of such extraordinary bigotry that I'm surprised even the Spectator magazine could have published it. And as a white man, enjoying white privilege, I feel second-hand fear at what he is saying to every black person, every brown person in this country. He is saying you are intrinsically more likely to be a violent criminal than I am as a white person. It's a hideous example, but it's also incredible projection, isn't it? I mean, it is like waving an enormous banner saying, this is about as racist as it's possible to be in society. I've actually given away the game as I see a black person or a brown person and I see a savage listening to ancestral voices and prone to violence. So the worst sort of Brexiters, and for the avoidance of doubt, some of the Brexiters who complained that people like James O'Brien think that everybody who voted Brexit is racist. Some of them were just liars. Some of them weren't racists. But the worst ones are clearly the ones who've subsequently emerged as disseminators of epic racism. Dominic Cummings did it recently with the David Lammy attack. And Daniel Hannan, I almost feel calling him the world's wrongest man is comical and vaguely affectionate, so I don't want to do that in this context. That's the single most disgusting thing I think I've seen in the British media in a very, very long time. I put it alongside the Katie Lamb comments about cultural coherence as the last time, and it was only a month ago. You know when you gulp? You know, you see something and it provokes a physical response in you? This man is fated. He's still paid routinely by the Daily Mail to write his article. I presume the Spectator paid him for this. They grew up watching Blue Peter, but they heard ancestral voices prophesying war. That is Billy Buncher-Numbers with a bulldog avatar and 63 flags in his online profile, punting doctored or AI videos of people of colour committing violent crime 24 hours a day on Elon Musk's hideous social media column. That is the respectable face of precisely, or the supposedly respectable face of precisely that phenomenon. And he will be entirely unaffected by this. The most hideous racism in plain sight, published by Michael Gove, and it won't touch him. Won't affect him at all. I'd be surprised if anybody's even suggested that it would be a bad idea to stick him back on the comment pages of the Daily Mail. If you're black, Daniel Hannan thinks that you are subject to ancestral voices prophesying war and therefore much, much, much more prone to violent criminality than I am. Or, I don't know, Peter Sutcliffe is because he's white, or Harold Shipman is because he's white, or Ian Huntley is because he's white. You think of a hideous criminal who's white, and that is nothing to do with his whiteness. Find me a hideous criminal who's black, and that is everything to do with their blackness. If you're Daniel Hannan. Absolutely despicable and so emblematic of what this country has become as a consequence of letting monstrous individuals like him anywhere near the influencing of public discourse. That's the end of my flipping TED talk, all right? Brilliant full disclosure this week with Toby Jones, one of those actors who everything he touches turns to gold. And this is funny. So he's one of those actors, and you've seen him playing Alan Bates in Mr. Bates versus the Post Office. You may have seen him in Mr. Burton this week on the BBC, the story of how P.H. Burton, a teacher, plucked a young Welsh lad called Richard Jenkins from a life of drudgery and turned him into Richard Burton, the Hollywood star. You may have seen The Hack, in which he plays Alan Rusbridge. We talk about all of this. But of course, he wasn't always famous. And in the early days, this is just a magnificent story about how he nearly ended up in the Julia Roberts film Notting Hill.
I got seen for the Notting Hill film. So I go in and I meet, and I have this nice audition with Richard Curtis and the late, great Roger Michell. And it's a scene in a bookshop. And I do it, and he directs me, and I go, oh, that's brilliant direction. He just calibrated I went, oh, that's somebody who really knows what that's proper directing. So I left the meeting thinking, oh, that's great. I won't get this part because it's too big. I won't get it. Anyway, so I didn't get the part. And then latterly, my agent rings up and said, there is a tiny part that they just need you, and they'd love you to play it for a day's work, playing a fan. I said, what do you mean, a fan? And they said, well, they're a bit worried that when Julia Roberts spills the orange juice on Hugh Grant's chest and he invites her back to his house to clean up the dawning, as it were, of the romance in the film, she wouldn't do that. She wouldn't say yes. But if there was a fan there pestering her, she might do it. So I played the pestering fan. And so I went along, and it's this big budget movie, and I do it, and everyone's charming, and Hugh's charming, and Julia Roberts is a little bit. I'd chosen a costume that I thought a pestering fan might wear, whatever a pestering fan looks like. And I think she looked at me, and I was a very, very convincing pestering fan. And as a result, she was wary of me and wouldn't give me my cue for my pathetic 3 lines or whatever. So we'd do takes, and I'd never get my cue, and I'd look at Roger and he'd go, "Oh, sorry, I'll tell him to give you a cue." Because I think he was already thinking of cutting it, because I think he already knew that wasn't necessary. And indeed, it was cut. But subsequently, so many strange things happened about that day. At one point, I left the set to have a cup of tea, and they wouldn't let me back on because they thought I was a pestering fan. At one point, they kept giving me all the photos that they'd taken of me in the different costume. They were literally extinguishing the fact that I'd ever been mentioned in as even possibly being in the film. And then the film came out, and then people said claiming to see me in the film. So I started speculating about why that might be, and I thought maybe I'm reflected in Julia Roberts' dark sunglasses on the take they took of that. And out of it, I made a show which was called Missing Reel, about the reel of film that I'd had. But it was also talking about that stage of my life, about the fact that in the very room and at the very crossroads where we'd shot the film was where I used to sit reading Loot and looking for flats.
Wow.
That we could possibly rent and buy. So, and that was where we were sitting on the day of the movie in that same cafe. So the whole thing had a sort of vaguely occultish feel that I turned into a show. And Richard Curtis very kindly agreed to show that I could show the scene at the end of the show, the theatre show. So we showed it, and people would come and go, "So that really happened?" I go, "Well, I wouldn't make that up. I mean, it's just."
No, all actors are great storytellers. They're really not. But happily, every actor we've had on Full Disclosure has been a brilliant storyteller. And Toby Jones is right up there with the best of them. That is such a lovely interview. I cannot recommend it highly enough. A perfect little a little gift from me to you for the weekend. But we end with Paul in Brentford's comments on... Well, if you're just tuning in because you hate me but you love Sheila, we end with Paul in Brentford's comments on the very nature of art, ownership, intellectual property and artistic endeavour. Paul, what have you got to say for yourself?
Well, James, I've been listening for a while because I've been hanging on for a while.
Yes, sorry about that.
No, it's okay. But nobody, I think, has really answered your original question. And I think the question was, what
am I buying? What am I selling? What am I buying?
What you are buying, if you choose to buy, is you are buying an idea. You are buying the idea that this artist, David Shrigley, has put together 10 tons of rope and he's put it into a gallery. And he says that if you want to buy it, you'll pay £1 million. Now, that's only going to be for only one person's going to do that.
Yeah.
But the rest of us, we're looking at it, and what do we think about it? Now, if you think that's ridiculous, maybe that's the point of the artwork.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe. You see, I've been thinking about that piece of work. And
so have I. I know, so have I, God damn it.
And I thought a lot of that rope has come from the ocean.
Yeah.
Rope is often used as a barrier. Is this some sort of metaphor about barriers being imposed upon asylum seekers?
Oh, dear. Yeah, I mean, it's whatever you want it to be, isn't it? In a way.
But again, that to me, you see, is the point of the art. I think.
All right, what about the banana?
No, but again, you're missing the point.
I'm not. I'm just asking, what about the banana?
The answer to the question, what's the banana about? I have literally got no idea.
But it doesn't matter.
I don't know. And I look at it, and for me, it's just a bit ridiculous. And the fact that...
But the rope isn't. The rope isn't ridiculous, but for someone else...
No, the rope isn't, but that's because I like that piece.
Same here. I like the rope. I wouldn't pay £1 million for it unless I had, I don't know, £400 million. But
I don't like the gaffer tape and the banana.
Same.
But that's fine.
I know.
I don't have to like it.
I completely agree.
David Shrigley. I mean, have you seen any more of David Shrigley's work?
I think I have.
David Shrigley is a genius.
Yes.
I mean, the last one I went to see was the tennis ball exchange. Do you know about that one?
I do know. I thought, yes, I didn't recognise his... I recognised his name. I didn't go, no, but I read about it.
It was 20,000 brand new tennis balls in a gallery.
Yes.
and you all on shelves, and you brought in an old tennis ball and put it on the shelf, and you swapped it, and that was the piece.
And that gets you thinking.
Well, I don't know. I just thought it was funny because when you went in the gallery, people had made up words. People, I mean, you know, I put the name of my dog on it, you know, and you know, said here.
I mean, we're nearly there. But I guess if we could pin it down in sentences, we'd almost be disproving our own conversation, wouldn't we? Because it's about the unarticulable. It's about something that can't be put into words, which is why it's put into art. There you go. That was quite profound.
Of course, it's about a feeling, perhaps, but it's an idea.
It is an idea.
Artists are all about ideas.
Yeah, you're right. I know you're right. It's so funny, isn't it? Before I go, did you get involved in the Brentford Art Mile?
This year I didn't.
Okay,
but I have done in the past.
I'll see you there next year, will I?
Did you go this year?
I went as a punter. I didn't exhibit anything. That would be insane.
No. Yeah, that's what I meant.
There was some lovely stuff. My mate Adam had some had a couple of sculptures on display in the thing that is next to where the Watermans used to be. You know, that office building. Yeah. It's full of artists now.
Yeah.
XYZ. It's all going on in Brentford, isn't it, Paul? People don't realise.
Brentford is a fantastic place.
Keep it under your hat, mate. Seriously. Okay. Actually, no, don't, because we're pushing back against people that demonise and denigrate our wonderful capital city. And Brentford is probably, as I think everyone would agree about this, the jewel in the crown of London. If you missed any of today's show, you can listen back on Catch Up on Global Player. It's free, unlike Banana's gaffer tape to walls, which could set you back $5.5 million. You can stay up to date with all the top stories and opinions, plus your news categories in the order you want, all of that. And Toby Jones on Full Disclosure this week, as well as James O'Brien Daily, the best bits from this show, with you later. Download the official LBC app for free from your app store now. Coming up at 4 on LBC, it's Tom Swarbrick, but now it's time for Sheila Fogarty.
Thank you very much indeed.
James O'Brien on LBC.